It's a privilege to be able to introduce Dr. Temple Grandin, animal behaviorist and internationally renowned spokesperson for autism spectrum disorder. Grandin is one of the first autistic people to document the insights she gained from her personal experience of autism. Faculty member of animal sciences in the College of Agricultural Sciences at Colorado State University. Based on her experience, Dr. Grandin advocates early intervention to address autism and supports teachers and professionals who can redirect children with autism in fruitful directions. She has been an outspoken proponent of autism rights and neurodiversity movements. In 2010, Dr. Grandin was listed as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time 100, which named her in the Heroes category. In 2011, she received a double Helix Medal and has received many honorary degrees from many universities, including McGill University, Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Carnegie Mellon University, etc. Dr. Grandin has been featured on major media programs. She was the subject of the Emmy and Golden Globe winning biographical film, Temple Grandin. In 2018, Dr. Grandin was featured in the documentary This Business of Autism, which explored autism employment and the success story of autism employers. She has been up in Time Magazine, People Magazine, Discover Magazine, Forbes, and the New York Times. She is best known for designing the Hug Machine, which is a deep pressure gadget planned to calm extremely sensitive people, ordinarily people with autism. Dr. Grandin?
To start out telling a little bit about myself, I had no speech until age 4. I got into very good early intervention, and I can't emphasize how important it is to do early intervention. And the main things that they taught to me was turn taking, lots of turn taking, learning how to wait and take turns, speech, and skills, things like getting dressed, combing hair, just basic skills. Now, one big concern I got right now is as I travel around the U.S., a lot of different states, you got 3-year-olds that are not talking, and they're on a 2-year wait list. That's not acceptable. We are going to have to start doing something. The problem we've got in the developed world is seniors. Social Security and medical care is half the national budget. I don't care if it's here, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, that's true. Let's tap into those retirees to work with the kids. Let's call it church play and library play for legal reasons. But we got to start doing something with these kids. They're just zoning out on screens. There's also a lot of talk right now about autism increasing. I think a lot of it is increased detection, but on the other hand, I think all the screens make it worse. Make it a whole lot worse. And these kids aren't getting out and doing things. Mother had high expectations for me with accommodations. I'll give you an example of that. When we went away on summer vacation, we had to go on a ferry where you drive the cars on it, and it had a horrible horn. No, did mother make me sit under that horn and get blasted out? No. We're going to go on that ferry, but I rode in the cabin down below. That was the accommodation. But we're going to go on the ferry. Otherwise, we can't go on vacation. Yeah, you're going to, there's some stuff that you just have to do. And I'm going to be talking now. This is a slideshow that I just gave yesterday. I was just at Chevron Corporation. I spent 25 years in construction, mainly during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And my sense of who I am is, university professor, designer of cattle handling equipment. I'll tell you, starting out my business in the 70s in the cattle industry, autism was a non-issue. It was being a woman. And what I had to do is I had to make myself really good at what I did. That's what I had to do. And I had some great mentors. Now, when I talk to business people, I talk about how we need the skills, the people that think differently. I ended up designing the front end of every Cargill beef plant in North America. I think that's doing pretty good for somebody that thought was mentally retarded and couldn't do algebra. When I worked in construction, I'm going to estimate that 20% of the people I worked with, people that owned machine shops, were autistic or dyslexic. Yeah, what's the kid doing now? Playing video games in the basement. You know how to get them off of that? Mechanics. And they may find that that's more interesting. We need these skills. And I want to talk about thinking differently. The first step is that you have to realize there's different kinds of thinking. I'm an extreme visual thinker. Everything that I think about, it's a picture. Okay, I'm thinking about runway delay yesterday, Denver Airport. We were 48 planes in line for takeoff. That really was not fun. Hour on the ground. Then finally the wind changed and we finally got in the normal line and we finally took off. And I'm now sitting in the window seat. 2 people beside me, the plane's packed. Yeah, we're not happy sitting on the ground. But you see, I see it. Memories are all pictures. Now, I didn't know that other people thought differently than I did. I thought that everybody thought the same way. So when I talk to business leaders, and I talk to bunches of them, the first step is you have to realize people think differently. This is the old thing why the artists and the accountants can't stand each other's guts. It's because they think differently. Autistic people are good for in details. This is a sign at the Denver airport. I think this sign's hilarious. Most people don't realize why it's hilarious. I said, take a look at that boarding pass. Area 51 at gate A51. Okay, if people in other countries don't know what that is, that's supposed to be where a flying saucer landed. Yeah, that's if you're into flying saucers and aliens, that's like ground zero for aliens. Being a visual thinker helped me in animal behavior work because I thought to look at what cattle were seeing. In some of the very early works that I did, I got down in the chutes to see what cattle were seeing. Like you see that reflection right there? That may be gone in half an hour, and then the cattle are going to move through the chute easily. There's 3 basic kinds of thinking, and autistics tend to be extreme. You might have an autistic extreme object visualizer, like me. Cannot do algebra. I'm going to also show you some other very successful people that cannot do algebra. And may also have an extreme mathematician. To be a really, really super good mathematician, you probably have to be autistic. But object visualizers, terrible at abstract math, but very good with mechanical skills. About 2 weeks ago, I sat next to a passenger that was a veteran who had been in the Army, and she had failed algebra in college, but she aced the mechanical aptitude test. And they basically said to her, you're going to fix airplanes, or you can fix airplanes, or you can fix airplanes. Too many kids today growing up that, they've never used a tool. They're totally separated from hands-on things. I'm a big fan of exposing kids to lots of different things. Then you can kind of find out what they gravitate towards. And I was very good at art. And my art ability was always, always encouraged. That was really important. As I travel around, I'm finding a lot of broken elevators, broken escalators. They're not being fixed. Now, at least the elevator in this hotel has an inspection certificate, but it was down near the floor. I didn't have time to get down on the floor to look at it. But in a lot of places, they're taking the inspection certificates off, or they're a year out of date. And I've been on some very, very questionable elevators. We need people that can fix these things. And a lot of them, I can tell you where they're at. They're playing video games on an autism diagnosis. It's not acceptable. And I think one of the things that's contributed to some of this increase is all the screen time. And social skills are not taught the same way they were in my generation. There's a new book out, Bill Gates. It's called Source Code. It's official. Bill Gates is on the spectrum. Now, his upbringing was very similar to mine. Yes, you had to sell stuff for charity. You had to go out and talk to people. At parents' parties, you had to be hosts and hostesses and talk to guests. And I'm realizing just how important that was for me. And Bill Gates said I had just the right amount of pressure with support. Too many of these kids are getting too babied. Now, no, they did not make me sit under that horn. I'll be very clear about that. The accommodation, since no headphones hardly existed in the 50s, was to sit in the cabin underneath the deck, away from the horn, or you could wear noise-canceling headsets. Make an accommodation, but we've got some expectations. Now I'm a big NASA fan, and last summer I got a chance to see the totally reconditioned 1960s Mission Control. complete with overflowing ashtrays. We got to do it really historically correct here. But at the Johnson Space Center last summer, we had to go up 5 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken at the Johnson Space Center. Now, this is the kind of guy I'm going to want for my plant maintenance department. See a box of parts and see flowers in it. That's the kind of person that probably is going to be able to fix anything. And this was in a welding class for people with autism. And one of the reasons I want to push the trades is AI is going to replace a lot of other jobs. The skilled trades are going to be laughing all the way to the bank. You're going to have a job when nobody else has a job. I'm watching AI really carefully. Now, here is your second kind of thinker. We've talked about the object visualizer. That's me. But there's also a lot of autistic people that are spatial visualizers, and they think patterns. Music and math go together, and mechanics go together. Half of the people in our tech industry in Silicon Valley are on the spectrum. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of autistic kids there. You put 2 computer nerds together, you're going to get autistic kids. You know, and there's been a lot of other things about causes of autism. I had a guy call me yesterday at the airport. He called me 5 times at the airport yesterday about Borrelia and Lyme disease causing every case of autism. Now, there's somewhere maybe something like that could contribute to severity. See, because the problem we've got with autism is you're going all the way from Einstein, who was on the spectrum, Bill Gates, to people that can't dress themselves. You know, there are some things that might cause problems during pregnancy. They make some of it worse. Now, I'm not going to rule this stuff completely out, but genetics is the primary thing. Another thing that Bill Gates and I had, we were exposed to the exact same teletype computer terminal. I could barely log on to it. I had to drop the programming course. Bill Gates took off with it. This is where thinking is different. Yes, and there's a picture of it in his book. It's the exact same terminal. But the point I'm trying to get across is we need these people. Elon Musk is on the spectrum. Let's say he picks out a nice computer nerd for one of those wives. You might end up having a non-speaking autistic kid. No, I've seen that pattern. So you have your picture thinker like me. He's going to be really good at like a lot of skilled trade stuff. Mechanical aptitude, which our schools don't value. And then you have the mathematical kids. And we're not doing a very good job developing our mathematical kids. I'm hearing teachers telling me, well, this 4th grader's really good at math and he's bored stiff doing little baby math. He needs to be moved ahead in math, or he turns into a behavior problem. That's not very smart. China develops their math kids. I get Science and Nature, and there's an article in there on quantum computing. I can't say I read an article on quantum computing. I look at an article on quantum computing, but I'm very good at reading author lists. They're from China. And then you have your verbal autistic mind, where this person totally verbal, but knows facts about everything, favorite thing. And the verbal thinking autistic can be very good at specialized retail, where they help somebody to buy the right car, the right printer, the right business insurance, the right financial products that I don't even understand. Because I'm looking at how do we get them working. This is where we're really falling down. Because the people in my generation that were on the fully verbal end, most of them ended up working. Because they learned working skills young. This is something we got to start doing. Chores for little kids. We have to have paper route substitutes for 11-year-olds. It's important that they start doing something for people outside the family. Walk the neighbor's dog. A church volunteer job. I know in a lot of your countries there's tons of little shops. Lots and lots of little shops. I've seen them. And I look at those little shops and I go, that one there might be a perfect place for my 12-year-old to start learning how to get some working experience. Because there's a tendency just to baby them too much. Now, we don't force them into, you don't do the equivalent of forcing them to sit under the horn. Don't do that. And you don't put them. Because for me, my primary identity is career. And having an interesting career made life worth living for me. Also enabled me to have a lot of friends. Language is not required for thought. Now, in the brain, you store this information here, but the frontal cortex finds the information. So I like visual analogies. Well, this library just couldn't stand to throw out their old card catalog. Analogy is the card catalog is the frontal cortex, the library's the books. Or Google is the card catalog, the data center is the books. And some people are mixtures of different kinds of thinking. And it turns out I've got some very big visual thinking circuits in my head. There are some pictures of that. Now, whether you're an art student, a science student, or a literature student, that affects how you might go about designing a planet. I think this is interesting, how different kinds of thinkers, different ways of doing things, and the art students will make fantastic planets with crystals, polar bears. Science students, they draw a boring circle, and then they tell you about the gravity and the atmosphere. And the literature students did some splotches. But you know what was bad about the verbal thinkers? No planning. Verbal thinkers have big concepts. Okay, we got to have an inclusive classroom. How do we actually do that? I'll tell you two things we need to do. Get rid of the LED lights that flicker. I'll tell you how to find that. Pull out this thing, preferably an iPhone, put it on slow motion video, and photograph the room. You'll find them. The other thing is, I basically need an external working memory. So if I'm working in a job where I have to do a sequence of tasks, put it down in a pilot's checklist format. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Teach the autistic person how to make their own checklists. Different approaches to problem solving. Object visualizers see risk, like I don't like the water this close to the computer. That's an example of seeing risk. Mathematicians calculate it. In my book, Visual Thinking, see, Thinking in Pictures, that's my older autobiography. Visual Thinking I did during COVID, and that's where I present all the science, that there's different kinds of thinking exist. And there's a chapter in there on disasters. And when I found out why Fukushima's nuclear power plant burned up, I'm going, how could you not see it? It's not a very good idea when you live next to the sea to put your super important emergency cooling pump in a non-waterproof basement. If they had put waterproof doors in there, it would not have happened. Verbal thinkers tend to overgeneralize. I have parents come up to me, teachers come up to me, what do I do with my autistic kid? I don't even know what the age is. Am I talking about a young 3-year-old that needs to be an early intervention? Am I talking with a teenager? I got to get him out of the basement? Or am I talking about a picky eater? And one thing I'm very concerned with that is vitamin deficiency diseases. They better be taking a multiple vitamin. Last year, I ran into a case of scurvy. That's vitamin C deficiency. Had all these weird symptoms, and I checked the recommended daily requirements of vitamin C for the things he ate. He was at less than half. And then I checked the symptoms for scurvy. He had scurvy. And when he went on C supplements, it cleared up. Now let's get back to the value of our non-mathematicians, the people that don't think in mathematics. When the patent office first started, everything was mechanical, because that's where object visualizers rule. And mechanical is an aptitude. Our school system doesn't value it. No, our military does value it. But we have a huge shortage of labor in the fixing things. Also, there's a lot of stuff we're not making anymore in the U.S., and it goes back to taking skilled trades stuff out of the schools, taking shop classes out. Now, some of our community colleges, after high school, are putting it back in. But that's too late. I grew up using tools. I grew up building things. Kids aren't doing that today. Big 3D printers, they come from Europe. The state-of-the-art electronic chip-making machine, the one we don't want China to get a hold of, it's going to be obsolete real soon. It's from Holland. Why is it from Holland? Because look at all the mechanical gadgets in that thing. And one of the reasons it's from Holland is because in Europe, in 9th grade, you can go university or tech route. We tend to stick our nose up at tech route. No, it's a different type of thinking. Visual thinking is a totally different type of thinking. You see how things work. Microscope's got mirrors from Germany. Now, in food processing equipment, we still know how to do beef because we got one person who cannot do algebra, but he can build a beef plant. Started out with a little tiny shop. But let's say I want to build a chicken processing plant or I want to build a pork processing plant. I got to buy all the equipment from Holland. That wasn't true 25 years ago. No, I've been in the industry for 50 years. This is a high-wage country. This is not cheap clothing and shoes. This is high-wage stuff that we are not building. Mars rover landing, made in the UK. Structural glass walls for the Steve Jobs Theater from Italy and Germany. Well, we've paid the price for taking out the hands-on classes. I'd be putting all these classes back in. Also, mechanical aptitude needs to be something we test for. But on the other hand, I looked up the mechanical aptitude test. You have to have some experience with building things and some general science on things like pulleys and levers in order to pass it. Like one of the questions was, is this a worm gear? Well, you've got to work with some machinery. You know, even that aptitude needs to be developed. I loved woodworking when I was in 5th grade, when I was 11 years old. Sewing, I had a sewing machine that actually sewed, a toy one, called the Singer Sew Handy. That was my favorite thing when I was in 4th grade. And when I was about 10 years old, musical instruments, tried them, I was terrible. Another kid's going to be exposed to musical instruments, do fabulous. This is where I'm a big believer in exposing kids to lots of different things. Well, for one kid, that algebra book's going to be a door. For me, it's a doorstop. You know, get them exposed to things. This is a great auto repair class for autistic adults. Often this will get them off the video games, and you can forget about designing video games. AI is going to take that over. Animation, a lot of that's going to be taken over by AI. I'm not a fan of video games in the basement. No, we got to get the duffs out of the basement. And one of the best ways to do it is introducing to mechanical things, slowly weaning them off. That's actually been successful. And unfortunately, video games are more addictive with autistics. I've looked up the research. This is an example of different minds working together. My grandfather, MIT-trained mathematical engineer, worked with an autistic guy who came up with a crazy new idea to make an autopilot for airplanes. They worked together in a loft, then a rented loft, and it got stolen. The stolen version was in every warplane during World War II. They were horrible business people. This is where you need a lawyer. I'm worried that our educational system is screening out, at least the US educational system, is screening out the object visualizers with all of the requirements for algebra. And someone who's, let's say, a veterinary technician or factory maintenance, you don't need algebra. What you need is your basic arithmetic. That you do need. And we need to be putting mechanical aptitude back in the schools. That is an actual aptitude. But you also have to develop it. Kid has got to work with pulleys and levers to get some of that mechanical aptitude. Now, the guy who owns this poor corporate jet can't do algebra. Started out with a tiny little welding shop 35 years ago, doing little tiny projects. He's building beef plants. That's why we still know how to build beef plants, but we can't build chicken or pork plants. No, I spent 50 years in the industry. And what's happening is the little machine shops are not forming. Little machine shops that we really need. Yes, I can tell you where the people are. They got an autism diagnosis and they're playing video games in the basement. There's a connection here. And some of the best times of my life was working in construction. If you're into hydraulics, you're going to think this is the most beautiful thing you ever saw. And I showed this to Chevron yesterday. Yes, this is what I call the clever engineering department. You see, there's two parts of engineering. There's a mathematical part, and then there's what I call the clever engineers, the non-mathematicians who work on all of the mechanical things and invent mechanical things. I worked with undiagnosed autistics that owned machine shops, 20 patents each. Good patents, not stupid patents, good patents, stuff that's still being used. Now, I worked on developing this piece of equipment called a center track restrainer system for beef plants. Every big beef plant has one. I think that's doing pretty good for somebody who can't do algebra, for somebody who thought was stupid. And one of the things that really motivated me was I wanted to prove I was not stupid. Yeah, I still can't do algebra. I don't think I graduate from high school today. I think this is a big concern. Kids are growing up not using tools. Big Legos are much more fun than the little Legos. You know what my idea of a vacation is? Well, I'm going to go out on I've got a big, huge construction project trip planned. That is a vacation. And going to the Johnson Space Center. That's the kind of stuff I like to do for a vacation. So let's look at who builds a food processing plant. The object visualizers will do the plant layout. You might have a person with a 1-semester course in drafting. Lays an entire factory out. It's the only training he's got. Laying out entire factories. Been there. I've laid out stuff. When you're doing remodel jobs, you got to figure out what you're going to rip out, what you're going to keep. Yeah, been there, done that. All the mechanical equipment. But then where do we need our mathematical engineer? Refrigeration. We don't touch refrigeration. We don't understand it. You see, this is where you need to have both kinds of minds. We got to make sure that the snow load doesn't collapse the roof of the plant. That's where we need mathematical engineer. Let's look at something like the Starliner spaceship. The mathematician tells the thruster when to thrust when you're doing re-entry. You come in too steep, you burn up. You come in too shallow, you skip off into outer space and die when your air runs out. That would not be very fun. Well, it's someone like me who has to design the thruster and put it together. And I looked up the valves for the thrusters. I'm going to be telling you about my squeeze machine. I've put that exact kind of stuff together myself on a squeeze machine. Somebody didn't put those valves together right. And they got the gunk of the sealant down inside the little tubes. Those little thrusters aren't going to work. That's what was wrong with them. You see, you need to have both. That's a major screw-up. Yeah, and when I saw the picture of the valve, I found the vendor. I've got a picture of the valve at home, and I wave it around in my Zoom calls. And I'm going, oh, I've put that kind of stuff together myself. Now, when we did our visual thinking book, which unfortunately is not here, but I've got a picture of it on my phone, I wrote the first drafts kind of disorganized. And Betsy Lerner, my co-author, she organized it. You see, she's verbal. You see, this is the two different kinds of thinkers working together where we collaborate, realizing we've got different kinds of thinking. Architects make a building look nice. Engineers make it safe. 20% of the people I worked with, and I spent 25 years in construction, people that owned shops were either dyslexic, autistic, or ADHD. Most of them couldn't do higher math. Yeah, these shops are not forming today. There is a relationship here. I'm seeing too many kids getting babied. They're not learning working skills. Little kids need to have chores. I have grandparents come up to me all the time, and they explain to me that they discover they're autistic. When the kids get diagnosed, these grandparents all have jobs. These are all from the fully verbal end of the spectrum. All have jobs. Had paper routes when they were 11. So what do we replace that with? Walking Mr. Jones's dog. They got to learn to do a job for somebody outside the family. And they need to be in the workforce as soon as they're legal. We've got a lot of people here from India here. I know. You got lots of little tiny shops. You got them in Africa, too. Yeah, you put that 12-year-old to work at the vegetable stand. You see, that's seeing opportunity. But there's a tendency to overprotect and baby. I am seeing too many 16-year-olds that are fully verbal that have never gone shopping by themselves. I was shopping when I was 8 years old by myself. Now, what would happen to some of our great innovators? Grubby little 12-year-old. What would happen to him today? Well, he grew up with stone cutting tools. He was exposed to great art. And then he started making things. And then a studio approached him and apprenticed him. So it starts out with exposure, then mentoring. I got into the cattle industry because I was exposed to it as a teenager. You got to get exposed to stuff to get interested. Where would little Mikey be today? In the basement playing video games. I'm serious here. As I move back and forth between industry, which I showed the same slide deck to yesterday. I was very worried about getting to the airport. They tore up half the parking lots at the airport, and I was worried there wouldn't be any parking. You know how they made sure there was parking? They just upped the prices. There was a big sign in front of the garage. They added another $10 a day to park in the garage. Yeah, it's going to be expensive parking. Steve Jobs on the spectrum, Bill Gates on the spectrum. Little Stevie used to play around in his next door neighbor's shop, messing around with stuff. Einstein, no speech until age 3. Where would he be today? Thomas Edison, high school dropout. He learned how to work, and he had a mentor that taught him how to use a telegraph. And there's another famous person on the spectrum. He better get to work on his Tesla car because the battery is no longer state-of-the-art. China now has a battery that can be charged in 8 minutes. Can't do that with a Tesla. And we need to be keeping all the creative classes in because a Nobel Prize winner was 50% more likely to have an arts and crafts hobby than just a regular scientist. What do we do to make them successful at work? But I have parents that just overprotect their kid. Like I'll suggest, that the 16-year-old, fully verbal, doing well in school, should go buy some printer paper. And the mom says, I can't let go. Or I suggest that her 12-year-old, next time she stops at a gas station to fill up the car, send the kid in and the mom says, I don't have the guts to do this. It's doing this at a very young age. Again, high expectations, but we do some accommodations. And let's avoid the jobs that are chaotic, rapid multitasking, like a really chaotic takeout window, chaotic stores during holidays, things like that. And then I already talked about the pilot's checklist. And when it comes to social feedback, You can't be vague and say, well, you're rude to colleagues. When I criticized some welding and I said it looked like pigeons had doo-dooed on it, the plant engineer made me apologize. What's the ultimate goal of education? Where's a student 10 years after high school? I was doing my first big design projects. You know how I sold jobs? I showed off my work. I learned to sell my work. Another thing I learned, doors to opportunity. This is where selling candy for charity served me really well. Because there's a scene in the HBO movie, Temple Grandin, where I go up to the editor of our State Farm magazine, and I get his card, and I start writing for the magazine. Because the biggest problem for me in the early 70s was being a woman. Autism was totally a non-issue. But there were women in agricultural journalism. I ended up becoming livestock editor. And I did very good, accurate articles on things like cattle feeders meeting and the ranchers meeting. I got respect for that. And then I started doing my design jobs. And I remember drawing this drawing. And I remember looking at this. It was in 1978. And I guess I'm not stupid if I could do that drawing. And this is the drawing that I sent to the Cargill Corporation. I designed the front end of every Cargill beef plant in North America. I think that's doing pretty good for somebody they thought was stupid. And it's a lot of stuff about identity. I can tell you what my identity is. University professor. I'm half-time with Colorado State now. Designer of equipment, scientist. Autism is an important part of who I am, but the scientist comes first. That's, I think, really important. Too many kids are becoming the label. Yes, and I just read the stuff yesterday. I just went on my phone and looked at the news, and Kennedy was saying something like autistic kids don't get jobs. Well, that's true. The grandparents got jobs. No, we got to be really working a lot more harder on this. High expectations with accommodations. Yeah, they need to be learning work skills early. And then I'd show off pictures. I learned to sell my work. Another thing I did really early on is I really got into being kind of an entrepreneur. I had a little sign painting business. This kind of stuff needs to be encouraged. And I love the fact the HBO movie recreated all of my projects. Just absolutely loved that. And it showed my visual thinking accurately. And I had a nice brochure, lots of pictures. We're going to talk about some of the things that helped me. Lots and lots of exercise. On sensory things, I'll tell you one way to help desensitize that. Let the kid control the noisy thing. Let the kid turn the vacuum cleaner on and off. Turn the hairdryer on and off. Whatever that noisy thing is. Beep the car horn. Whatever it is. And if you wear headphones all the time, it's going to make it worse. Absolutely will make it worse. Have them with you all the time for control. Have them with you all the time, but don't wear them all the time. And I get asked, what would be my number one thing for research? Working on ways to desensitize sensory. Because my sensory problems now, they're just nuisances now. Like I have to find pants that don't itch, for example. And I wash them a bunch of times. But a burst of hard exercise every night. When I got in the room last night, I did 120 old lady push-ups and 100 strokes on the floor. I put a towel down on the floor. Work. Mother found me a sewing job when I was 13 with a seamstress that worked out of her home. I was cleaning horse stalls at 16 years of age. I was painting signs. When I was in college, I had internships and work. No, I've seen autistic kids graduate from college with honors and fail in the workplace. They weren't learning work skills. I cannot emphasize this enough. We baby them too much. But on the other hand, we don't chuck them into that chaos, the worst Starbucks takeout window. And now I'm seeing a little coffee place I went by on the way to the airport with a giant line at it. Now, that's where you don't put them. Back doors into jobs. Forget all the online crap. Use the back door. I see you nodding your head there. Use the back door. How did I get into CSU? I called up a really good friend of mine who was a professor. Back doors into jobs. And that scene where I get the editor's card, that scene is real. That's a really important scene. It was very important in getting my business started. I also learned how to save money. I got an allowance, 50 cents a week. I could buy 5 Superman comics. But if I wanted a 69-cent toy airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. Friends who shared interests. This is another really important area. Friends who shared interests. I can't emphasize how important that is. And when I was in high school and I was bullied and teased and everything was terrible, I had friends riding horses and friends in model rockets. For another kid, it might be band. And I was learning work skills. I was about 17. I fixed up this ugly shed, but I did it in a way that other people would like. That's me up there painting a totally stupid sign for the Arizona State Fair for the Himalayan monster. It was a dummy in a freezer chest full of ice. Totally stupid exhibit. Well, how to end up painting that sign? Because I showed an old sign painter a portfolio of my sign. Driving, it's going to take longer. It's going to take a lot longer. I was very lucky that on my aunt's ranch, the mailbox was 3 miles away or 6 kilometers away. I could drive up to the mailbox and back. Lots and lots of practice in a totally safe place. And everybody's too scared. We're going to start in the middle of a giant parking lot, the middle of a giant field. I am talking totally safe place. And it might be 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks. Or if you have a golf cart, that I might start on that. But if I hadn't learned to drive, that would have really limited my career options. Slow transition from school to work. This needs to start only 6th grade, 12 years old. Got to do that. I had some great mentors. I had a contractor who seeked me out to design jobs for him after he saw some of my designs. I got to give all the mentors credit. My mother taught me to read at age 8, reading out loud with phonics. I had great elementary school teachers. I had a wonderful high school science teacher. I had my aunt out at the ranch that when I really got down, I talked to her. Jim the contractor. I want to give credit to all of these people that really helped me. And you know where I had all the trouble with being a woman? Middle management, foremans. That's where all the trouble was. People that put bull testicles on my vehicle, that was a feed yard foreman. That was middle management. But I had a lot of people that helped me. But they did just the right amount of pushing. As Bill Gates says, just the amount of pressure with supports. We already talked about some of the sensory stuff. This would be my top area for research. Even now, when they go, like using the shower, I put my hand in the shower and I do a lot of feeling before I get in the shower. Another thing I do is I hang the towel over the door so that I can wipe my face. All right, those are simple things I can do. And there's some individuals that have visual processing problems. There's a small subgroup of dyslexia where they'll see the print jiggle. It's not all dyslexia. You know how you fix it? And they also hate escalators. Try printing the work on pale pastel papers. Just try it. When it works, it really works. Now, the problem is, I just did a lit review, and it's not evidence-based, because it only works on a subgroup of dyslexia, not all dyslexia. But you're talking about colored paper. Cheap, can't possibly hurt you. You just try the pale pastel colors. I've seen it save college careers. Some individuals see image breakup, there's print jiggling. I already talked about some of the problems with flickering LEDs. Some kids may need sensory breaks, but I want to see these individuals getting into the workforce. Here's a paper that is a scientifically validated study of a method desensitized. The title of this slide is the title of the paper. Environmental Enrichments and Effective Treatment for Autism. That's the title of the paper. You can take a picture of that. And what you do is you basically stimulate 2 senses at the same time, like maybe you smell peppermint and touch a cold water glass. Just with simple things like this, and it is evidence-based. We need to be doing much more research on this. And then for your individuals that are non-speaking, these are books written by non-speaking individuals who are typing completely independently. I don't care what country you're from, there's tons of electronics around. You just got to find an old tablet. Doesn't matter how much tape it's got on it and stuff like that, because you need to use a tablet. Laptops and tablets do not flicker, ever. And the print has to appear right next to the screen. They cannot attention shift. The laptop isn't good, because if I look at this keyboard, the print appears up here. Tablet. I don't care what country you're in. I'm amazed at how much electronics it is. It may be stuck together with tape, but they've got it. We just got to have to, or they can type on a piece of cardboard. Okay, slow processor speed. This is something that I still have. I cannot follow rapid back and forth conversation. Still can't do that. Rapid multitasking. Rapid response to a question. Long strings of verbal instruction. That's where I've got to make the checklist. And I have problems with interrupting. Yep, still got that problem. But attention shifting slowness. I still have this problem. This is an old paper by Amy Klin. And Amy Klin had them watch Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, old black and white movie, and they had eye tracking software. Now look at how many times the normal looks back and forth between the eyes. Tension, shifting, slowness. The paper never mentions tension, shifting, slowness. But I think this is one of the best slides for illustrating that. Teaching the little kids, slow down when you talk. Because when the grown-ups talked fast, it went into gibberish. Give the kids time to respond. Always encourage them to use their language. But they're like a slow phone, a slow internet connection. You got to give them time to respond. Use teachable moments. Let's say I stuck my finger in the mashed potatoes and I went, instead of screaming no, Mother would say, use the fork. She'd give the instruction instead of screaming no. Give the instruction instead of screaming no. You might have 3 or 4 teachable moments in every meal. Teaching turn-taking, huge part of my treatment. All kinds of board games, learning how to wait and take turns, and guess who else did lots of board games and card games? Bill Gates. It's amazing how the way he was brought up was very similar to me, and the things that were done with him. And of course, we're both old enough to be pre-video game. Okay, Elon Musk got into video games, but he's just old enough that when a video game crashed, you'd get the blue screen of knowledge. Now you just get a blue screen of death, like when they had the big crash last summer. But you'd get a blue screen with code in it. Well, then, of course, they're going to get interested in that. I call that a computer showing its guts. Computers don't do that anymore. They don't show their guts. Because, of course, he'd get interested in looking at the code. Yeah, but we're all old enough to have, but this whole thing with the video game addiction, these kids are going nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. No, some people think, I'm not suggesting a ban on this stuff, but we got to limit it. Got to limit it. Absolutely got to limit it. They're going nowhere. Well, there's my working memories trashed. Fear is the main emotion in autism. Horrible problems with anxiety. Horrible. And it got worse as I went through my 20s. I had colitis that wouldn't stop. My health was falling apart. Terrified of airplanes. This is the airplane I was terrified of. When this thing put the gear down, I thought the bottom of the plane was falling out. Well, you learn more about it. I want to hear that sound. I want the wheels down when they land. Really important. Terrified of airplanes. And that was the worst one right there. And it's called a Fokker. You got to be very careful how you. I can tell you, air traffic control loves to say the name of this plane and not say it carefully. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah, Fokker. But what you have to do to get over being afraid of stuff in public speaking, I walked out of my first talk, have really good slides. Then when you panic, you just go to the next slide. I got over being afraid of airplanes when I got to fly in the cockpit of one of these right here with a load of heifers going to the Philippines. You know what I learned? Not the Philippines, excuse me, Puerto Rico. Going to Puerto Rico. Is that you can let animals pee and poop all over a plane to where it drips out of the bottom of the plane. I'm not kidding. And it still flies. After cattle have crapped and peed all over it. I went in the cockpit of this thing. Miami Airport, early 70s. Circus didn't begin to describe what went on in the cargo department in the early 70s. Now, what's controlling my anxiety now? I've been on a low dose of antidepressants since my early 30s. It saved me. And the mistake made with drugs like Prozac is too high a dose. Throw the label away. The dose has to be starter or less. Starter or less. When you use any antidepressant drug for anxiety. Now, that's in my old book, Thinking in Pictures. Even though that book's old, it's still accurate. Yes, and let's avoid Valium and the benzos. That's crap. Don't take that crap. But I've been on a low dose of an antidepressant since my early 30s. I'm 77 now. I just hope we're not going to have supply chain management problems with my old medication. I'm just hoping that's not going to be a problem. Another thing that helped me with my anxiety is my squeezing machine. Well, this has valves, has fittings on it very similar to stuff that was in the Starliner. I looked at that valve and I'm going, I put that kind of stuff together myself. I know exactly what they did wrong. And I built that myself. That's an example of skilled trades. Here are simpler ways to do pressure, but you see the approach I'm taking is what the kid can do. We're too much getting into the autism stuff. All right, what about stimming? Was not allowed at the dining room table, but it was allowed after lunch. Okay, what's my stimming? I can do obsessive doodling. That's what I do. I start drawing circles around the letters on something, but that doesn't bother anybody. Oh, I can really, really scribble up a piece of paper during a Zoom call, and nobody can see it. I know just exactly what the camera can see. They don't see it, and I can cover a whole paper full of little squares and diamonds and things like that. So I found something to stim with that doesn't bother people. Lots of people shake their knees. We get into the whole thing about masking. Now, where I would get very fatigued is noisy restaurants, fast chit-chat conversation. Cannot follow that. That's very, very fatiguing. But just the basic social skills, just being polite, yeah, that you can do. And the other thing is hygiene. There's a scene in the movie where they slammed the deodorant down and said, "You stink, use it." That scene happened. Clean it up. It's that simple. There's lots of different choices today. You got to clean it up. You can be eccentric, that's fine. Even on a construction site, you've got to clean it up. Show kids interesting things. I got fascinated with optical illusion rooms because I saw it in a science movie. And the science teacher wanted me to figure it out myself. There's Penrose tiling from Stephen Hawking. You know what he had to say about disability? Concentrate on those things. Your disability doesn't prevent you from doing well. He said that to the New York Times right before he died. He could do math in his head really well. Then I talked to a guy that worked with a guy with cerebral palsy. And this guy got really mad when people talked to him like he was a child. Somebody had introduced him to the stock market and investing, and he had become extremely good at that. Well, he basically told the guy to swear word off when they talked to him like he was a child. This is somebody I talked to just a couple of days ago at another business that I gave a talk to. Let's put science and nature journals in the high school library so the kids can see the article on quantum computing. It's amazing the patterns I see in these mathematically oriented articles. I just want to turn the math kids loose on some of this stuff. Nature and science. Nature's the European version of science. Let's get it in the school libraries. Let's paper copy. No way they're going to get anything that nasty. And visual mathematics, mathematics and plants. Here's some really cool free educational materials for teaching coding. National Geographic Citizen Science. NASA's got a lot of good things. Lots of free stuff. And the thing is, even in a poor community, there's more resources than you think. Because things like the dog walking or church or volunteer jobs, those you can do in the lowest income communities. That's why I recommend those things. Community center, volunteer jobs. In a lot of developing countries, there's lots of little shops to work in. We need to just find that shopkeeper, be willing to work with that kid, and we're going to have to recruit the retirees. We've got to recruit them. They're taking up half our budget right now. I'm one of them. I'm 77 years old. I still work. And they say, "When are you going to stop?" And they drop dead somewhere. They haul my dead butt out of a hotel room or someplace. I can't lift things anymore. I tore up my shoulder. The mundane, I get hurt. I wrecked my shoulder on an airport parking shuttle door of all the dumb things because I'm not careful there. Other places, cattle, yeah, careful around those. They're dangerous. In a plant, really careful. Restaurant table, fall, hit the edge of the table, smash everything in here. So I got to worry about restaurant tables and parking lot buses. Well, that's sort of the end of my talk. We have time for questions? Okay. I want the kids working, period. And I think just about the fully verbal ones need to be working. I think that's true in most cultures. Now, in the developing, some of the countries I know that are represented here, I know they have lots of little shops. I haven't been to India, but I've been to the Philippines, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Argentina and Brazil, seen lots of little shops. That kid can be put to work in those shops. I think in most cultures, you're going to want your kid, especially a fully verbal kid, to be a contributing member to society. And see, my biggest problem when I started out was being a woman. I was starting out 70s in the man's industry, the cattle industry in Arizona, and I also learned to sell my work. Like, I was a good livestock editor. I got respect for writing accurate articles about meetings. And then we have the kids more severely impacted. They're not going to be working in it for a construction company or be a university professor. See, then we've got these non-speaking individuals that some of them have a normal brain inside. They've got a locked-in syndrome. And then you've got some where they got heavy-duty epilepsy on top of autism. They've got all kinds of other stuff wrong with them. They're going to need 24/7 care. See, this is the problem we've got with autism. You're going from Einstein to somebody that's very severely impacted that has very different needs. You see where if you're dyslexic, okay, you can't read. That's much narrower. So give me an example of a cultural difference. I don't think in generalities. I only think in specific examples. I'm a bottom-up thinker. See, when I was a little child, you're talking about having problems with infanticide. When I was a very young child, I looked terrible. Absolutely terrible. I had no speech when I was 2.5 and 3, no speech, constant screaming, no social interaction. And I'm 77, so in the US, in that era, they normally just put these kids in an institution. They didn't kill them, but they just sort of just threw them away. And the problem when the kids are very little, you can't tell how they're going to come out. Now, the one good thing on me that was checked was no epilepsy. That tends to improve the prognosis. But you can have a little kid that really looks bad, and when you do your early intervention really good, you get the ones that become fully verbal, you get some partially verbal, and you get some that don't improve. See, this is the problem. It's so variable. But then you also have the Asperger type where there's no speech delay. You see, that came in when in the US on the guidelines, in the 80s, in the US at least, you had to have speech delay to be autistic, period. Then the Asperger's came in, where no speech delay and socially awkward. Then in 2013, we just put it all together, and everything's all together. And you've got very different individuals. You see, people get locked into the label. It's something the verbal thinkers do. I'm kind of like seeing examples of different examples, and I'm seeing a smart kid that won't leave the house. One of the things you always want to do with these kids is give them some choices, where you could do this job or that, this shop or that shop. Give some limited choices. Then you have physical handicaps. I love the Paralympics. I just love to watch the skiing events. They got some wheelchair basketball. Those are some really good things because it's showing what people can do. Yeah, you see, that's the thing. And then you go back in the Greeks that used to leave the baby out on the mountaintop. Let's talk about they don't learn to speak. Some of them have learned how to do, some simple jobs they've learned how to do. They can often do more than you think they can do. The other big problem with non-speaking is hidden, painful medical issues that cause behavior problems are not getting identified. Things like severe urinary tract infections, earache, ear infections, tooth infections, acid reflux is very, very common. I have that. And then you give them some acid reflux medicine, and the behavior gets better. But hidden, painful medical. If you have a non-speaking individual who's been good, now the behavior's horrible, let's rule out a urinary tract infection, constipation, the hidden, painful medical. That always has to be ruled out. And then there was one individual, I was talking to a dad, and he didn't realize what his son meant when he kept saying Advil, which is the name of a painkiller here in the US, of a pain medication. And then he got so mad he injured his dad. Well, he was saying Advil, that was his word for hurting. Yeah, he had something wrong that was causing pain. Yeah, you've got to look at that. The other big thing is frustration because they can't communicate. Got to have a way to communicate. I can remember the frustration of not being able to communicate. I want to teach them typing because there's quite a few non-speaking that actually have a locked-in syndrome. And they eventually get to independent typing. These are people that type completely independently. But you see, the other thing I want to do, a lot less medical model. People are totally, their identity's getting, on the fully verbal end of the spectrum, getting too tied up with autism. Because I worked with people that would be special ed kids today. They owned metalworking shops. This is what made me crazy. You see, then they'll say, well, the special ed kids can't take shop because of legal liability. Well, in my generation, they owned the shops. Yeah, I worked with them. Just as autistic as they could be, terrible social skills. But boy, could they build and design things. Little Folkers, those are antiques now. They're antiques. And I'm not a big fan of that. Well, there's a jet, the pilot's called the Barbie jet. Little tiny CRJs. Got the worst door in the industry. I've had 3 flights canceled because they couldn't get the door closed to get the plane to pressurize. Yeah, I don't really like that airplane. I've watched young pilots slamming that door as hard as they can slam it, and they can't get it closed. I can tell you when it's closed right. I can tell by the sound. 3 flights canceled because of a poorly designed door. I don't really like that plane very much because that really messed up my plans. You got that little baby CRJ and they got a door problem, you're not going. They just can't get the door shut. I've been on that plane where we got up to where we're supposed to pressurize. Plane wouldn't pressurize. We had to go back to the Denver airport and the flight was canceled. Do you think I liked that? No, don't. That's the reason I don't like that airplane. And it has a worse designed door. No, and I've watched a pilot slam that thing as hard as he can slam it. And it may get closed right, it may not. I want to commend you for coming up here and asking the question and speaking in front of the group. I want to commend you for doing that.
Wow.
That is something I want to really compliment you for doing that. Because that's the kind of thing that you need to be able to do.
Yes.
I thought, when I was young, I thought everybody thought in pictures. You see, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they were shocked when they found out they think differently. I thought everybody thought in pictures. I couldn't figure out why people thought I was crazy to get in the chute to see what cattle were seeing. And at the time that I was doing that in the early 70s, I did not know other people didn't think in pictures. Now I recognize that. And this is the old thing with artists and accountants hate each other. And the problem for that is that they think very differently. And the first step I tell business people, like I told the people at Chevron yesterday, that the first step is you have to realize they think differently. And that guy that can take apart an engine or some piece of equipment out in the oil field, he's only been there for a month and now he figured out how to fix everything. He just sees how it works. And this will be the guy that probably flunked math in high school. You see, I know these things now, but when I was in my early 30s, I thought everybody thought in pictures. And you know what was my first idea that people thought differently? If I ask you to think about something that you don't own, but it's out there, think about a church steeple. How does it come into your mind? I was shocked when a speech therapist just got 2 lines. I see specific ones. And why a church steeple? Because you don't own them. And I was doing this before there were cell phone towers. I could do cell phone tower. And I'm now seeing a really, really good fake tree that we have. Also, we have a bison, that's a bison sculpture up on a hill, and he has cell phone transmitters on him. I see another fake tree, that's an awful one, doesn't have enough branches. But you see, even on cell phone towers, I'm seeing specific ones. And there's something that's out there, but you don't own it. But I was shocked. She just saw 2 lines, just the most vague representation. Then as I questioned more people, this is before I found the research, a lot of people that are mixtures would get a steeple that had more detail, but it was still generalized. It wasn't where the object visualizer names off where they're located. Well, they come up as a series of PowerPoint slides now. In my generation, they came up as 35 millimeter slides on a carousel. Then I started talking to more people. And then, when I did the Autistic Brain book, that's when I found some of the first research that showed that the object visualizer like me and the mathematical mind are very, very different. And there was a bunch of tests they did that showed that. And those references are in the Autistic Brain book. And then more detail is in my new book, Visual Thinking. I'm sure Amazon's got plenty and it's waiting to ship right now. And I do have a picture of it on my phone that I can show you. Little kids that run off, and then oftentimes it's nonverbal kids that run off. So the 8-year-old's running off is fully verbal? Yeah. There ain't any penalty? There'd be penalties for that. The 3-year-old's really little. You're going to have to just, 3-year-olds have a tendency to run off. Now, first of all, we got to make sure there isn't something sensory in the classroom. The number one thing in architecture would be the lighting that flickers. And the lighting companies don't really want to talk about this, and they just want to get away from that flickering light. So what do we do if we've got a classroom really awful lighting? If you got windows, get that kid's desk over by the window. If you don't have windows, then let the child pick out a light that does not flicker, put it on his desk, and let him wear a hat. See, that's a simple thing that we can do. Then I'd have to look at what kind of situations is the 8-year-old running off. Okay, if she's curious about something, she needs to learn to say, and then you have some flexibility. Well, she wants to go look out the window at the airport or something like that, and then ask you if you can go. Oh, I saw a little 3-year-old yesterday just glued to the window of a plane, and I was in the seat behind him, and her shade only was open. I opened her shade. She was glued to that window. We landed last night looking at all the lights. I'm appalled sometimes. Little kids are on planes playing video, and they don't open the shade on the window seat. I think that's just horrible. That's the kind of stuff that kids should be doing. Yeah, why they're running off. Yeah, you see, and that can be a real problem. But it's something like likes to go look at some stuff that's rotating. Well, then one of the things you can do when you're out shopping, you can give her a chance to look at the sliding automatic doors, or whatever the thing is. Give her a chance to look at some of this stuff that moves, that she likes. I wasn't one of the ones that ran off. First of all, I came from the generation that my butt would have been tanned. Now, what they did, if I had a tantrum at school, mother and the teacher worked really closely together. When I was like 8 years old, if I had a tantrum at school and threw a big fit, when I got back home, mother would say, well, Mrs. Deach called the day if I pitched a fit either at school or at home. There was no television for one night. Would she understand those kind of consequences for running off? All right, then maybe if she tries to run off, yeah, but we've got to get parents and teachers working together. And mother went to the small local school. It happened to be a private school, but it was a little small local school with about 12, 13 kids in each class when I was in elementary school. And the teachers and my mother were in constant contact. And the headmaster of the school told me that they turned down another family because they didn't feel that the parents would work together with the school enough. But this is where the rules were the same at home and school. Okay, running off, that mother would have handled that. There'd be no television for one night or no video game for one night. Don't take it away for longer than that, but like one night, no video game, no TV if you'd run off.
I think that's what we're using.
And then it has to be the same rule. Home and school, very evenly applied. That's the consequence for running off. And then the other thing you can do is that she wants to look at rotating doors or something like that. When we can go over and we look at them a bit. Let her satisfy that curiosity. Or some other thing that's moving, a flag or whatever. Go over or at least stand and watch it for a while. Okay, so I just want to tell the audience, you got your late diagnosis last year, okay? You're a visual thinker, so you failed algebra. See, this tends to be the pattern. So what were you good at? Art, okay. But that tends to be, and see, art and mechanics tend to go together. But that's the pattern. The object visualizer's terrible at algebra, and one of the problems is there's nothing for me to remember, because it's totally non-visual. And I'm very concerned that a lot of people, skilled tradespeople, were screening out. Because I showed you a corporate jet owned by a person who cannot do algebra. Because when the battery was dead on one plane, he rolled out the second one. I'm going, you got two? You got to be kidding. Okay, it started out as a tiny shop, and now he hires. He has mathematical engineers on the staff now to do the refrigeration. Yeah, he's hired them now. Because the first thing I know, I'm dealing with an early intervention kid, definitely not the 13 and 14. Actually, the research, should they do 2 languages? Recommendation was just have them do 1 language. The new research is showing, go ahead and let's become bilingual. Let's go ahead and become bilingual. That is what the new research is showing. One language at home and another language at school. That's absolutely fine. Well, the other thing that the 14-year-old needs to do is he needs to start getting some work experience. You got lots of little shops in Africa. I know you have them. And he needs to be working in one of those shops. And you need to find a shopkeeper that'll kind of be willing to work with him. You know, if let's say he's rude to a customer, well, you can't say a customer's stupid because it bought the ugliest shirt in your shop. I'm seeing a big sign that in the 70s, every store in Arizona had this poster of a giant lion, and it said, "The customer is king." And there was some promotion, big, huge poster, and the shops put it up in the back room. But he needs to start working now. And then if he said something rude to a customer, then the shopkeeper needs to explain, well, the next time that customer comes in, you're going to apologize for that. You have to tell him exactly what to do. This is where he has to be taught boundaries. Okay, like you can hug mom, you do not hug customers. Or you just have to explain that when you're working in the shop, you don't hug customers. You just have to tell him very simply. But he needs to start working now. But he's 14. He could probably do some little job. See, where we're really falling down is on the work front. When we get our early intervention, we're doing good on that, but I'm very concerned in the last year. I've been to 5 or 6 states in the U.S. where the children are 3-year-olds that are non-speaking are on a 2-year wait list, which is absolutely not acceptable. And we're going to have to start church play and library play and, okay, retired teachers, we got some really, really rewarding work for you to do. One of the things you can do when we're trying to get him to help out, let's say in the house, give him a choice. You could vacuum the living room rug or clean the bathroom. In other words, give some choice in what you could do. Give choice. Now, when I went out to my aunt's ranch, I was afraid to go. Not going wasn't a choice. The choice was 1 week or all summer. I got out there and I absolutely loved it. Always give some choice. Just recently, within the last 6 months, a 12-year-old ruined a family trip because he got out to the airport and this kid wouldn't put the phone in the x-ray machine, blew a gigantic fit and wrecked the trip. What you can do is now we'll have a choice. You can leave it at home. You could leave it at home. It goes in your backpack or it goes in the dog dish. They go in, and those are dog dishes. And how do I know that? Because when they bought new ones, they hadn't taken the labels off of them. That's how I know. But you can get some choice. You can leave your phone at home. But you bring your phone to the airport, it is going in the x-ray machine, period. But you can have some choice of what you put it in. Okay, you see, that's giving some choice. That's too top-down and too generalized. Staffing prices in what? One of the problems we got with those jobs is the pay is terrible. I just heard a teacher's pay is terrible. I know one of my graduate students, a talented teacher, and the pay's just horrible. It's a highly skilled job, it doesn't get the pay, and that can be really bad. I think we're going to have to do more stuff, tapping into retirees. I'm 77. Some of these people are retiring at 55. They're 20 years younger than me. My back and shoulder didn't get messed up until just about 2 years ago. So I can't lift anything anymore, especially with this arm. I can't believe it. Stupid parking shuttle. Let me tell you now, I'm very, very careful when I get off that shuttle. But somehow I got my arm caught in the handle. And when I stepped down the steps, it jerked it back like that. Well, and I go, this is not good as I walk to my car. There's a big problem in a lot of things. And we're going to start getting a lot more creative. There's more resources in the neighborhood than you'd think. You know, in a lot of the countries, there's a lot of motorcycles. Let's get our visual thinkers fixing motorbikes. You'll have a job for life. And then they're going to need somebody to help them with the finances at the shop. But fixing motorbikes, I don't think motorbikes are going away anytime soon. Maybe there'll be electric bikes, but they still have things to fix on them. You see, I'm visualizing things I can do in the community. But the problem we've got with a lot of these jobs, the pay's terrible. So if they can get a job somewhere else, they're going to do that. The other problem is, at least in the U.S. and the developed world, is the seniors are sucking up all the money. You see, when I first started, I've been in research with livestock for 50 years. When I first started in the 70s, research money flowed like water. Absolute water. We had so much, same thing Australia, New Zealand. Oh, these big, huge labs they had in the 70s and 80s, they shut them down in the 90s. This is part of your problem. No, we're going to have to try to tap into a lot more things in the community. I don't know what else to do. Where you're talking to people who work with people with disabilities. And then lots of times you're networking at a conference. You find good things. The networking. Find where there's some services available. Like I was on a Zoom call. The Minnesota airport has a service where you can take your autistic kid in and practice all the airport procedures. Okay, that was found out at a conference. That's an example of finding a resource at a conference. You can bring your kid in there and sometimes even go sit on an airplane, but at least do security practice. There's other places it's not available, but that's the kind of, find out where there's things in the community. And I've actually seen some very good service things through churches, some very, very good stuff. I have to talk about my country because that's where I see things. But I've seen some very good things for the real severe autistics, and they're church-based. And they're major big donors that have put them together. And they're excellent programs. I've been to them. He goes always going in the shower. He must get some kind of stimulation from that he likes. He's 6 to 7 times in a day. Well, and things is going in the showers. There's other stuff he could be doing worse than going in the showers. He's obviously getting some kind of stimulation from that's calming. Now, the other thing is, with any of these individuals, including me, is he getting enough exercise? Because another place where the research is clear is that a burst of hard exercise is really important. So you have a trampoline to jump on. So he's very much into that. There's something he's getting from the shower, and I haven't heard that before. Because there's others that don't like the shower, they say it hurts. And I think one of the ways to help desensitize that, I hate a shower where when you turn it on, it just sprays on you. Okay, the one here at this hotel, I can turn it on and then put my hand in it. But sometimes you have a hotel where the faucet is under the shower, and then when I turn it on, it just blasts me. I hate a bathroom set up like that. I want to turn it on, and then I can put my hand in it. I like it when the faucet's away from the shower, then I can turn it on, and it took a little while to figure out how to get the hot water to work. The thing's not very well labeled, but then I'm just putting my hand in it and playing with it until I get it just right. But where it just suddenly squirts on me, I just hate that. Even now, I can tolerate it. I turn it on, but I don't like it. He's getting some kind of sensory stuff from that. At least he's not doing something self-injurious. That's the thing. And sometimes the kids that get self-injurious, one of the ways to prevent that is have a whole lot of other sensory things that they can do. So he's doing either running around, jumping, or going to the shower. He seems to have a huge, huge need for stimulation. You see, so this is like one way that autism is, and then you got the kid that won't put him work in a little shop somewhere. He would not work at that. This is the problem we got with autism. She's just got such a broad range. Well, you see, a lot of these individuals, in order to learn a task, when you demonstrate it, they've got to see the entire task with no steps left out. Otherwise, they won't get what you're supposed to do. Obviously, getting stimulation for that, and fortunately, he's not doing anything where he's hurting himself, and that's good. Well, maybe put a restrictor head on the shower so it uses less water. They're not very expensive, and it still squirts on you, but it's just a lot less water is used. You might want to get one of those. You see, I'm always trying to figure out what is something simple that we could do, because it's a point where if you have a water barrel up on your roof, you're going to use that up. No, you don't want to be doing that. And then that shower will use half as much water. Well, you're probably not going to identify it in a 3-year-old. Probably not. My ability in art really became obvious at around 6 years old. Well, let's look at what they're drawn to. I was drawn to art. Another kid may be super good at musical instruments. This is why it's so important to expose them to so many different things. It's real important to do that. Another kid, you start teaching math, and then you want to give them more harder math. That's not going to be me. I had tools growing up. I was building things. You expose kids to a lot of different things, and you see what they gravitate towards. Now, the mathematicians and the visual thinkers both like Legos, but the autistic child that's the word thinker, these are often the history lovers. They get totally attracted to history classes and facts. They're not interested in Legos and tools. So you kind of have to look at what are they attracted to. But you have to expose them to enough different things so you're going to know what they would be attracted to. If you don't expose the musical instruments, which I was, and I was terrible at them, you're not going to know. Another kid's going to take off. I had a little flute. I never could figure out how to play it. But you don't know if you don't expose it. And then I was just doing the same horse head pictures over and over again. And Mother said, let's draw the entire horse, not just the head. Let's draw the saddle. Take that fixation, broaden it. If a child likes cars, let's do math with cars. Read about cars. Take that car interest and broaden it. Good that he likes to eat different foods. That's good. He doesn't have the picky eater problem. That's good. He might be one of the word fact thinkers. And where they just pick out some subject that interests them and they just know everything about it. He probably is a word fact thinker. You know, these are the kids that love history. Okay, his thing's gotten to be food ingredient labels, but then what you want to do is broaden it. Like, okay, you're looking at the ingredients. Well, you've got things like maybe, corn or wheat or something like that. Then you can learn about how that's grown. Where does that ingredient come from? Yeah, where does the ingredient come from that's in that food? And you can learn about, where does it come from? Okay, if it's corn, that's a crop. Corn syrup, that comes from a crop. Then it goes to a factory. You start learning about how the food is made. Where does that stuff come from?
Yeah.
It doesn't come from the grocery store. Becoming a cook or a chef, that's something that's a decent job. He can become a chef. And then you have to teach him some things about cooking. Well, he's got to learn safety stuff, around the stove. Well, when I was 9 years old, I was taught that certain things are grown-up activity, and you have to have grown-up behavior. And the stove is one place where you have to have grown-up behavior. You don't fool around on the stove. This is not for children. We're going to let you use this with very, very careful supervision and impress upon them the importance of safety, because you can get burned. You could burn up the house. That's something you don't want to do. And that you have to have, and I could kind of rise to the occasion in different things and have grown-up behavior for those sorts of things. And you have to impress upon them, this is a place for grown-up behavior. And that it always has to be supervised.
Yeah.
For a 9-year-old, that's not used without supervision. Well, it depends upon how you define masking. The thing that I would find very, very fatiguing would be if I had to do a lot of fast, rapid chit-chat conversation. Because I'll notice that people will get in a chit-chat conversation back and forth where there's very little content, and they get into kind of a rhythm. I cannot follow that. And then I would, if I'm trying to follow that, that would be masking. But just being polite, I call that business social. That's just something you have to do. I kind of define masking a lot more narrowly. I had one autistic lady in Des Moines, Iowa. We had a very nice autistic panel. And I asked her what masking was, and she said, and I like this definition, if it makes me totally fatigued, then it's masking. And I really liked that kind of definition, because just being polite, I don't consider that masking. That's something, you see, in my generation, kids were taught to say please and thank you. And I think the reason why we have so many granddads and grandmoms that had jobs and stuff is because they were taught social skills. And where the late diagnosis was helpful was with relationships. But I think the label's holding them back in the workplace. Really, really do. There's certain kinds of conversations I can't follow, and to try to follow that, yes, I'd be very fatigued. So you found something that's a rewarding, good career, that's great. Because I want to see the kids that think differently getting into good careers. And too many of them are ending up in the basement. I just heard a horror story just the other day, and then COVID hasn't helped it any. No, get out and get careers they like. Some of the funnest stuff I ever did, people I know were autistic, was out on the construction site. A lot more fun than the basement. That's what I want to get them out doing. And we got to end it there. Thank you all for coming.
Welcome all the panelists, Dr. Temple Grandin, Dr. Alok Sharma, Ms. Lynn White, Dr. Richard Bowles, Thomas Island, Ms. Stacey Hoagland, Ms. Elizabeth Bonker.
I've been to all the tech companies, Microsoft, been there, Google, a lot of the other, Apple, and there's all kinds of autistic people there.
35% of autistics cannot use speech for communication. I learned to type at age 5.
I stopped talking for 6 months, but I was also absorbing information like a sponge.
I'm a geneticist, so that's what I focus on. It can teach you what things that can help to mitigate the problem.
One of the things right now that's a big push right now is how hyperbaric medicine can affect autism, or positively, right? And hyperbaric oxygen therapy is one of the best anti-inflammatories.
We are treating younger children at about 3 with stem cell therapy. Within 6 months, they are going off the spectrum.
Every person that I ever met with autism, they all want to be a valuable member of society, to have a quality of life that every human wants to have.
This is going to be a very unique panel discussion. I mean, we've got such distinguished people here coming from different backgrounds, different specialities, different age groups, different everything. This is an open discussion. It's open questions for all of you. But I'd like to kickstart the discussion by asking Temple, the autism that was there in your age group, or that Bill Gates describes, and the autism that you see now, could you share with us, what do you think, what is the difference?
Well, I had definite speech delay, absolutely definite. Some of the things that have been discussed that might be possible causes didn't exist. I'm 77 years old, and then I'm thinking back to when I was a child and when I was young, people that would have been called Asperger's, where there's no speech delay. A lot of these grandparents that come up to me and talk to me, they're old enough that some of those other things wouldn't have caused it. And what I got to thinking about all of this, like there was some very severe stuff discussed, there's a lot of people where they're just slightly geeky. I think they've always been here. So is autism increased detection or something else? I think it's both. And I think on this real mild end, some of the people I worked with in these shops, they wouldn't have had speech delay, but they would have been taking shop classes. And I think all the screen time has made a lot of stuff worse. But then you get into remains nonverbal. That's very severe. Regression at age 13. Then you have the kids that regress at age 3. Some of those kids, are those different? That needs to all be looked at really carefully. It was interesting in the genetics talk, it said genetics, but then in some trigger. But there were plenty of people from my generation that would have been the Asperger type, where there's, and I know that's not used anymore, no speech delay. My father was probably one of them. He also had allergies, and then we both have eczema and skin rashes. I have Meniere's disease that I managed to get into remission. That's autoimmune. I think we need to separate out the, might say, the Asperger type from much more severe, where there's a lot of other things wrong with them. And now I do know in my generation there's always been kids that were just labeled mentally retarded. Yeah, now those have always been around too. But I think we need to be looking into all of these things. And I'm recommending let's limit the screen time. I was very happy to see a little 3-year-old glued to the window of the plane last night. We were coming in when it was dark and all the lights were on. Not glued to a phone. A lot less screen time, a lot going back to some 1950s, just teaching some basic social skills. And the ones that are slightly geeky are gonna do a lot better. Because these grandparents I talked to all had jobs, decent jobs. They managed to keep them. But where it helped was with relationships, getting a diagnosis. And it probably would have helped my father. I'm almost positive he was on the spectrum. No speech delay. That's maybe a very different thing than some of this much more severe stuff. And the first thing I want to do is take the data and like divide it and start doing some categories, like a multivariate analysis on the data to see how it breaks out into categories. And there's all the discussion about Kennedy. Well, we both might be right. You see, on one part of the spectrum, I think it may be just increased detection, but some of this more severe stuff, some of these other factors may be involved.
If I may. Oh, and I'm what I like to call a Zennial. I have Generation X's work ethic and Millennials' tech savviness. I was born during the Star Wars years, like late 1983. I just aged myself there. But I also see some of the development of how autism has appeared over the years. For instance, when I was first diagnosed, or even before I was diagnosed, I stopped talking for 6 months when I was about 2 years old. But I was also absorbing information like a sponge. So when I finally spoke again, I was ready to wring that sponge out. I could read, write, spell, rearrange magnetized letters on the refrigerator into words. I would rewind Sesame Street over and over again, my favorite parts of movies. We've really come a long way since thinking that Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man is the definition of autism, or at least that's what they had to work with back then. You didn't need to have an intellectual disability, mental retardation, whatever you want to call it. In the mid-90s, that was when diagnostic criteria changed, and I was officially diagnosed then with mild autism. Yes, the term Asperger's syndrome was thrown out there, but my formal diagnosis was mild autism.
Back in the 80s, you had to have speech delay to be autistic.
6 months of non-speaking, that was considered a speech delay, so I fit the bill more or less officially, but it was also really an eye-opener. So that explains why I rewind videos, why I do what I do. So having knowledge of that diagnosis, understanding how it came to be, and what I'm going to do about it. This is the hand I've been dealt. I don't want to change in the sense that if you were to say there's a cure for autism, you want it? I'm saying no, because I am who I am, and I wouldn't be who I am without autism. And like I said, belief in yourself. In your own time and space.
Well, so this is an open discussion. Anybody can jump in. So, Taita, do you want to talk about some of your work?
Sure, I'm happy to. So just to give you a quick overview, as you kind of probably heard from me, I'm a pediatrician. I have cerebral palsy, was born in 28-weeker, 18 surgeries later. Here I sit by the grace of God as a pediatrician and a hyperbaric medicine physician. But one of the things that I do, I run a facility all across the United States and abroad doing hyperbaric medicine for special needs individuals, for both children and adults. I've treated all indications for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, the 17 that are approved in the US, and over 65 internationally. One of the things right now that's a big push right now is how hyperbaric medicine can affect autism, or positively, right? And hyperbaric oxygen therapy is one of the best anti-inflammatories out there available, better than prednisones, better than anything else like that. The big key, before I go into a little bit more, I'll take 2 minutes, it's important to note that correct type of hyperbaric chamber is necessary, right? As the president of the American College of Hyperbaric Medicine and a key opinion leader in that space, it's making sure that we don't have a lot of these soft shells and the misunderstanding of how to use hyperbaric medicine safely and effectively. But the bottom line is it does work because you're mobilizing stem cells through nitric oxide pathways, and you're able to see when you use hyperbaric oxygen therapy, it addresses...
You're saying the soft shells don't work?
I'm saying that a lot of them aren't as effective. Yes, ma'am. I think that there's a safety effort there. They're not covered by the FDA. People don't have the right training. They work in terms of some depth, but I think that there's a larger breadth there that has to be, make sure you're doing it effectively and correctly, right? So we see this a lot. But you'll see a lot of anti-inflammatory processes and stem cell mobilization where you have actually an 8 to 12 times increase of your stem cells, and that's why these kids are improving. And when you combine them with some of Dr. Alok and other stem cell programs, you can see dramatic improvements. And so we're seeing the same kind of testimonies that you are showing in your presentation, Dr. Loke, new speech, ability to pick up new language. It's incredible results.
Is your work published? Do you have scientific papers showing the results?
There's well over 250 published papers, both in India and across the United States. There's actually, apart from that, there are over, just in autism, there's over 200 published papers in terms of showing the anti-inflammatory effects and how hyperbaric medicine can mitigate and improve autism and its effects.
Richard, would you like to jump in? Genetics versus environment.
It's not versus, it's always both. The genetics is who is at risk. I mean, let's face it, no one has perfect genetics, and no one has a perfect environment. But some children are being affected and other children are not, even though they're in the same, very similar environment. The difference is genetic risk, but even if you have the genetic risk, does not necessarily mean that you're going to get it. You have to have a permissive environment as well. So it's 1 plus 1. You have to have both of them. I think that a lot of people are focusing on environment, and that's great because that's something you can do something about, but not that many people focus on the genetics. I'm a geneticist, so that's what I focus on. Not that it's more important, but I think it's equally important. Knowing the genetic risk can teach you what things to avoid better. It can teach you what things that can help to mitigate the problem. Knowing the environmental risk can do the same thing. So I think they're equally important.
Do you have any?
So much this entire week, right? We've heard so much about the new numbers and who's affected and who's not. And while, we definitely know that we have a greater number because physicians are better at diagnosing it, but they're getting better at diagnosing it because there's no more autism. So they're having more experience with it. I've been an educational advocate for 25 years. I have a son who's 30, who was really part of that initial bubble, if you will, where we saw significant growth. And I can certainly tell you, I work as an advocate in the 6th largest school district in this country. And the numbers of students who are in special education programs, not the kids we would have missed before, have grown so exponentially that the systems have not kept up with the numbers. And the children who are really getting what they need, whether it is through medical intervention, educational intervention, looking at housing and opportunities for employment, they're generally the kids whose parents remain the most active, because there are ways out there to be able to access the supports, but there's no silver platter. So it's really good that you guys are here because you're getting a bit of the silver platter here, but you really have to learn more as much as you can, because the services, even if somebody comes up with some like where it's from, if you will, we're still going to need to advocate for treatment, for housing, for job opportunities, for better education. So the needs to advocate is not going to decrease. If anything, it could actually increase. So I just encourage you all to do that. So I think the numbers are not just like, it's not just genetics, it's not just environmental, it's not just this type of autism versus that type of autism. I think that every person that I ever met with autism, and it doesn't really matter if they were a speaker or non-speaker, they all want to be a valuable member of society, have a job if that's what they choose, or to volunteer, but to have a quality of life that every human wants to have.
Lynn, do you want to?
I agree with everything you said, and I think one of the things that we have to do is, if we do start getting to the bottom of some of this, so to speak, is we cannot forget those who really still need us. There are way too many out there that are not getting what they need, and what I'm the most concerned about is if they come up tomorrow and say, these are the 3 things, so we're going to turn the numbers back around. Our children are here. These children are here. We have parents here who have come up to us and said, my child is 4 years old, help. Okay? We can't forget them. They're here. And I think everything she said is right. I don't work in the school system, she does, but I will tell you what I do know from on the homeschooling side, because I've been a long-term homeschooling activist, is there are a lot of parents who homeschool their children because they're frantic. It's not because they're, I'm going to be a homeschool parent. It's, I don't know what else to do. And until we accept that we have to do more, I'm all about finding the solutions, but that's above my pay grade. I'm just trying to help the people that need the help.
And in that vein, I failed finishing an Ironman twice before I succeeded the 3rd time. And for those of you that don't know what an Ironman is, it's 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of biking, and 26.2 miles of running, all in under 17 hours. And I thought I could do it in Texas, but humidity, heat, headwinds, hills, they took me down like Superman to kryptonite. I attempted it again in Des Moines, Iowa. Got the same or similar conditions. Also, I didn't have the right equipment. I realized I really had to invest not just in money like a new watch and better bike, but also putting in the time. And I too do not use functioning labels. I feel when you call someone low functioning, you discount or dismiss their strengths and capabilities. When you call someone high functioning, you discount or dismiss their needs or struggles. So in my book, functioning labels, whether you put them on yourself or you put them on others, that's the F word. Don't use it.
Temple, I'm asking you. Yeah.
Okay.
Hypothetically, let's say RKF Jr. approached you to give advice on what the government needs to do, one, to maybe reduce the incidence of autism, and second, how to manage. What advice would you give the government?
Well, I think we're going to have to go all local because basically we're running out of money.
Okay.
I've just looked at I went to several sources. I checked out our national budget. Over half of it supports seniors right now.
Okay.
Over half of our national budget. Research money in my field and labs have been closing in a 50-year trend line.
Okay.
And we're going to have to start doing a lot more local stuff. We need to tap into these retirees to with the early intervention that we're not getting. We're 2-year wait lists, totally terrible. And I was happy to find some people I talked to at lunch where they're doing some of this for retirees. Some of these people are 20 years younger than me. They need to be working with these 3-year-olds. That's what we're going to need to do. Tap into retirees to teach an art class, teach a music class, teach a whole lot of different things. You know, I read an article the other day that cruises in golf are not all what they're cracked up to be. That was in one of the papers. We're going to have to get into the local sources. Also, over the years, I've changed my terminology. I have old publications that say high and low functioning. I can't change that.
Okay.
But my new publications, I'll call them nonverbal or non-speaking. Remain nonverbal, don't speak. Got rid of high and low functioning. Like, you know, some of the older stuff, you know, some of the activists got after me. Now, sometimes I think they can go overboard on all this jargon and things like this.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I just like to figure out really practical things. Okay, like the really nice lady right here was telling me, I like to give you an example of the kind of problem solving that I like to do. And when she was alone, she feels really scared because she's helpless. And I said, well, let's find a way for you to call somebody on a phone. Well, it has to be auditory. So we're going to just teach Siri that is one person, is another person, and then you just call on a speakerphone. You don't have to buy expensive stuff. I think they could be done with existing equipment. That's a simple thing to do. Okay, different buttons on the wheelchair that won't work. Okay, well then we don't use that. There's so many simple things. I remember one time watching a wonderful video a guy presented that showed a kid somewhere in Africa got one of those Blade Runner legs, got a pair of them. And he was just so happy out there stomping in the mud puddles. And something like that makes a lot more sense than a fancy electronic leg that's going to just break.
Okay.
It's also something they could probably make in local shops. You see, this is where a visual thinker sees solutions to problems. You see, the idea for that phone thing, it's a car phone. You say, now call so-and-so. Well, we just got to make those little abrupt sounds. Why am I picking out those sounds? Because I don't want it accidentally going off all the time. It has to be something that you do very deliberately that will make it call somebody. And I just think that stuff up. I mean, that's what visual thinkers do. I heard a solution to a problem. I also saw car phone in a car, too. The activists got all over some parent group that's called Profound Autism. And these are the people who need 24/7 care. You know where I've seen some of the best 24/7 care for really severe? Some faith-based groups. I've actually seen some very, very good programs. Benjamin's Hopes in Michigan, Brookwood in Texas. It's all private money. So some of the best programming I've seen for, I don't know what you want to call them, but these are the people that need 24/7 care. And they grow up into adults and the parents can't take care of them for the rest of their lives. You know, that's just examples of some things I've seen that really worked well. We need more of that kind of stuff.
So we'll touch on an important but sensitive topic, Tom spoke about his impending getting married, and you have chosen to live life by yourself. Between the two of you to discuss, because very often people on the spectrum who are older, they approach doctor and say, should we get a child married? What would be your advice?
Oh, there's been some very successful marriages. And the wife runs the business. No, seriously. There's been some very successful marriages. I know 2 computer programmers that got together. That's been very successful. They're both on the spectrum. And you know what they did for their engagement dinner? You got to go to a white table restaurant. You got to have candles because you got to set the stage for a super romantic discussion on computer data storage systems because they are the most interesting thing in the world. And 2 chemists got together.
Oh, okay.
Yep, there's been, some of these you intend to have nonverbal autistic kids. Yeah, there's a place for getting married. I had one parent come to me and said, my son's doing great. He got married, bought a house, going just great. And if my book helped somebody to do that, I think that's really a good thing. No, they should get to do all the things that regular people do. Some of them have got kids. That's been successful. I'm a problem solver. And I think I've figured out a way for you to get a phone that you can use. They'll call 2 or 3, maybe at least 2 numbers. Because I'd be anxious too if I was you and I was all by myself.
So, Tom, your views?
For my part, as far as marriage goes, there was a time I thought I wouldn't get married. And I was in a relationship with a woman on the autism spectrum, but it didn't work out. My parents, and they're still together. My mom and dad are still married after 45 years, but they live over 1,000 miles away from me. There was a time they offered me the opportunity to move up to where they were going. I said, I've built a life here. I'm going to stay. So actually, my parents, as much as I love them, being out of the equation actually helped me blossom. Yeah. I say we have some agreement. and Rosetta, she had to step out to check on an order of hers, but we had met in person 6 years ago at an event, kind of like this one. So we knew each other in person, face to face, stayed in touch online. During the pandemic, she moved to Virginia. That's where she hails from. I was in California. Then I was doing the Ironman in Maryland, the one I finished. And before that, I said, I'd like to meet you again. So we made arrangements after I finished the Ironman to meet, and we decided to get married, and we're getting married in September. And there are people in my life, unfortunately, that are thinking this would never happen. And now that it is, they are struck. Don't you think that woman is the most gorgeous woman out there, crown or not? And for someone with autism, and she's not on the autism spectrum, but I am able to make our relationship work. We have our struggles, as any couple does, but we believe that it's going to work out. And statistically speaking, only about 7% of people with autism ever get married. And even fewer stay married. So we have some resistance, some difficult spots, but our love matters. And I really wish she was here to hear me say that.
I would like to add, although that's very good, because as a pediatrician and as a person with a disability myself, I have a wife, 3 kids. One, we also adopted a special needs daughter who has Netherton syndrome from wound care side. We won't get into all that. But the point is, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the term ableism, right? A lot of times a neurotypical individual is going to say, well, back in the old days, I wanted to go to the movies. Well, we didn't want to invite Tyler because he couldn't walk up into the stairs, right? So they were trying to save my feelings because they didn't want me to fall down the stairs, for example, when really I just wanted to be invited to the movies, let's say. So the point of all this I'm making is you just got to look outside the box and allow, there's a lot of blessings. We're all handicapped. Mind the world can see. We're all struggling with something. We all wish we could change something about ourselves, and that's the whole point about whether you're on the spectrum or not, right? But I think it has very much, we have to combat ableism in this country. Going back to what I would say to RFK, if it was for me or for anybody else with a disability, is when we lose value in people, we start to fail. And I think that that's where the slip is, even though maybe some of his comments, in his mind, he was actually trying to help. I want to believe that, right? He was talking about the severe autism where they're never going to get married. I mean, I see these kids. So do you, Dr. Sharma. So do you, the occupational therapist. That's a real thing that we deal with, and these parents are looking for hope. So I don't want to say that by any means he's inherently evil, but it's a crass comment, and realizing and finding people's value and how they navigate the world.
And people that are non-speaking, if they're in a job, know the difference between real work and stupid little busy work. And the other place where I've seen some really great programs is when the chairman or the president of a company has a child with a disability. I've forgotten the name of the man that did the warehouses at the Walgreens pharmacy, the distribution warehouses. He changed the computer so you didn't have to read, and the crews with the intellectual disabilities did better than the so-called regular people working in these warehouses. You see where the top does it. I went and I visited a plant in Mexico that actually had a very good program. There was a guy there that had, he said we had a boardroom meeting, and he said, well, I have Asperger's, and I now support my family. I support my sick grandmother. He was very proud of that. They put boxes together. Well, they had a marble stair in their corporate office. 3 people carried the wheelchair upstairs. It sort of was just the attitude of doing it in the middle of Mexico. Again, an owner of a company that has a child with a severe disability makes stuff like this happen.
So about 35% of autistics cannot use speech for communication. These non-speakers can learn to type. I learned to type at age 5. It's never too late to teach a non-speaker to type. With typing, we can be educated and live productive lives. Please read to your children. They understand what you are saying. You are teaching them to read. There are now thousands of typers around the world graduating from college. You need to work on these body issues. Thank you to all the doctors. You cannot learn if you feel terrible. Regulation issues affect so many of us. We are working on getting non-speakers out of fight or flight. Communication and regulation for all. You can do this, parents. We appreciate all you do for us, even if we can't say the words. Non-speakers suffer in silence. Please use Communication for All to teach them to type free of charge. We have stencil sets to give you so you can give your child a voice, and we have them over here for after the presentation. First come, first serve, we want to give them away. C4A Academy is our program of instructional videos. You can do it. We are all human beings who want to connect. We don't want to be left alone. Take us out to museums and for walks in nature. You can learn from parents who have walked the path and autistics who live the life. Non-speakers have a motor disorder, not a cognitive one. We want to have relationships of all kinds. We are just like you. Look beyond our differences. Please believe your children have gifts for the world. The world will be a better place when all non-speakers can communicate and share their gifts. There are more than 30 million non-speakers in the world and only a few thousand typers. Please join our mission to change this. Most non-speakers are diagnosed with intellectual disability, and we have a motor disorder. Don't believe the IQ tests. We need to learn to type to show you what we know. Giving an iPad with a picture exchange system is not enough. We need 26 letters to express ourselves and be educated. Please watch the Spellers movie on YouTube. It will show you how typing changes lives from hopeless to hopeful. Profound autism conflates non-speaking with intellectual disability wrongly. Non-speaking doesn't equal non-thinking. Teach them to type. We are all interdependent. I was extremely self-injurious and have great empathy. Please don't give up hope. The right doctor can help. A virus triggered PANS, an autoimmune reaction. It is serious and needs expert treatment. Parents, keep pushing the medical science. You are the expert on your child. Find doctors that believe autism is a treatable condition.
This question is for Dr. Bolts. this is about the supplements that you had shared earlier. Is there a protocol to wean off the clients or patients who are using them, or is it more like a lifelong usage of these items?
I think that depends on why the supplements are started in the first place. If they're started because you want to improve your concentration and focus a bit, and then you do it on your own or go to an environment in which that's not necessary, then you can decrease it. But for the most part, autism was present at conception, at least the genetic component of it, and the neurological part was present in very early life. And most people continue these supplements for a long time. I do want to mention one thing that from earlier is that when we're talking about autism, we're talking about an extremely wide spectrum. And on one side, you have the billionaires, and obviously they are employed and they are getting married, and they are thinking of themselves as neuro-unique and not disabled, and that's very, very valid, and they are actually offering a tremendous amount for society. And on the other end of the spectrum, as a pediatrician, I see people that have very severe intellectual disability, who have abilities of a 3-year-old when they're intellectually while they're an adult. Maybe they can't even walk very well, maybe they have seizures, maybe they have serious problems as well. And those are also with autism. And those people are not going to get married and are not going to be employed. And then there's everything in between. There's a tremendous spectrum. And so it's really hard to talk about everything on the same spectrum with the same answer.
I can't stress enough how much people underestimate the autism population. Yep. We are overlooked, we are undervalued, and unfortunately we believe what we are told, sometimes too much. When we're told we can't do something, we internalize it, we believe it, and we stick with that. It took a lot of me to get out of my own way and realize I don't have to listen to the haters. I'm going to do more with my life, and look where I'm going.
Well, one of the things the projects that were shown in the HBO movie I did in the 70s, and I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. That was a huge motivation for me, as a lot of people, since I couldn't do higher math, thought I was absolutely stupid and I wouldn't be able to do anything. And then I discovered these other people out there that owned machine shops, couldn't do higher math either, and were on the autism spectrum, and they had really good businesses and 20 patents. That made my day when I discovered them.
How would you respond to people with autism or their family members who participate in self-isolation because of the maybe fear of judgment of going into the community, and what you would say maybe to inspire them to go into the community more and participate in the community more?
Well, Mother always had me out in the community, and she had a very good sense of how she could stretch me and the things that I'd be capable of doing. Like, for example, when we went to my grandmother's house for Sunday dinner, for my exercise, I was allowed to play Beat the Elevator, and I could run up 5 flights of stairs before the elevator got there, and that would kind of run the energy out of me. Another thing they did is I only had to sit at the family table for 20 minutes. Then I could ask to be excused, but if dessert wasn't served, I didn't get any. So if I wanted dessert, I had to stay. You see, she always put some choice in there, but she had a very good sense of how much to stretch me, and she realized that big, noisy crowds were sometimes a problem, but I'm concerned that some moms just totally overprotect. They can't let go to let their kid do the most innocent things, like while you're pumping gas in the car, have the kid run in and buy some milk at the store. And I had one mom says, I don't have the guts to do that. You see, this is where the moms just can't let go at all, and they're doing everything for the child, and the kid's not learning anything. And I have a book called The Loving Push, and that was aimed at, getting these moms to get them out gradually doing things. You see, I've seen huge problems with everything being done for them, and they're not learning any skills. And we had a rule that it had to be on the list. So as soon as I knew how to write, I'd put things on the list, and I would help with grocery shopping. I'd go and get things on the list, put them in the basket. I was learning that at a very young age. Yes, and you do Walmart, for example, that's one of our big stores, when it's not so busy.
In California, where I live, I don't know if they do it here in Florida or other places, there are certain reduced sensory hours. Like you can go in between like 7, 8 a.m., less lighting, less people, a lot more better shopping experience. But I've written a book, Come to Life, Your Guide to Self-Discovery, to address gang out there. Life doesn't come to you, my friends. It's up to you to come to life. Are we keeping our kids out from out there? And also in addressing the naysayers, the people that might be holding us back in a sense. That's in my book, My Glass is Full. And these are available for sale.
Is in neuro needs, I mean, we have some people with autism that work for us, and they are in positions in which their abilities are perfect for their job. They are better than a neurotypical person at that job, because we know that they can do that, and we know autism. We just need to get the word out that these people have certain abilities that allow them to do things better than other people, that it's not charity, that employers will want to hire them. And they'll want to give them a good wage. We think that, I mean, this is what Dr. Grandin was talking about, is the way of fixing things in pictures and everything, is that they have abilities that other people don't have. We just need to get that word out.
We wouldn't have any computers without all the people in the tech industry. And I've given talks there, and half those programmers are on the spectrum. Yeah, I've been to those companies. I've sat in their fancy restaurant, watched all the nerds come in. We need the skills. See, that's the thing. At one end of the spectrum, and you've got Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Bill Gates is official now. He's on the spectrum. And he's had a very successful business. Another thing, both me and Bill Gates were taught that you give back. That was something we were both taught. I have put 23 graduate students through school paying for their masters and their PhDs. That's what I've done with the book money and speaking engagement money. And Bill Gates said you get huge amounts of money going into healthcare. We were both brought up in an era where you give back, which it's been really eye-opening for me to read his book, because so much of how we were brought up was very, very similar.
Thank you so much for all of your work that you do. And I need to emphasize that profound autism is real. Work is being done right now to put it in the DSM so that we can have a specific name for the people that will require lifetime support. And as much as, of course, we want our kids to continue to grow and to thrive and to be as independent as possible, it's very important to recognize that for some people, they are not going to be independent. And the best thing that we can do is continue to support them, have trained caregivers, because one day we're not going to be here anymore, and our kids are still going to need care. And the system is very broken for them. And it's hard. Autism is not always awesome for everyone. It's hard. And, you know, when you see kids that are beating, or adults that are beating their heads and they've lost their eyesight because they're banging their head on the wall, I mean, these are real things that they're dealing with. And so it's a big spectrum. When we adopted our kiddo that's special needs, the developmental doctor, the first thing that he told us to do was watch your movie, Dr. Grandin. And it was amazing for us. And it was very eye-opening. And the encouragement was there for him, and we are still encouraging our kiddo. But he's almost 20 years old, and he still can't use the bathroom by himself, not completely independent. He can't brush his teeth by himself, and that's a goal that he worked on the entire time that he was in school. So we have to recognize that, you know, he's not going to get married. He's not going to be able to live the same life that my other kids can live. He's not going to be able to drive a car. But any improvement that he can make towards being independent, we're going to continue to push him. I mean, he's still in therapy. He just got on a horse 2 weeks ago. We were shocked about that. We never thought he would get on the horse. We thought he's going to go and brush the hair of the horse and just be there. But no, he did. And so that improvement that he made, I mean, we're thrilled, and we're going to continue to do that. But we also have to prepare him and his brothers and sisters, that, you know, he's going to need care after we're gone. So I just wanted to say that remember, and I appreciate everybody's positivity, but remember that for some people, they have kids and family members with profound autism that are going to need lifetime care.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. In my talks, one of the things I talk about all the time is we're going from Einstein that somebody is going to need, you know, constant care, 24/7 care. You see, this is one of the problems. And it's such a big spectrum, all with the same word on it. And I totally agree with you. And every talk I do, I make a point of, some of the activists attack the term profound autism. And I'm not the one who's attacking it.
People that have the loudest voice are putting in the input, but the people that can't speak and their caregivers, God bless them, are tired. I mean, it's all you can do to pay the bills and take care of a person, change adult diapers, emergency room visits. Nobody wants to babysit, so you can forget, like, going places. It's hard. So those people are left out of the research and the statistics. And so it's important for us as the autism community as a whole to remember that 27%.
Okay, now I'm very interested in the 27%.
That's profound autistics.
Okay, where that figure came from. Just from my experience, I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I was just at the Profound Autism Summit last week in Boston, and that was the figures that they gave, and I trust
But
that.
I've seen parents just completely stressed out. I remember one respite program they had in Texas, and the family was so stressed out, they just put the music on in their air-conditioned car and just laid there for 4 hours. That was how stressed out they were. 4 hours of respite, and this is very different than somebody like me or somebody like Bill Gates. It's a totally different thing. And then you have some that are kind of medium that may not be totally independent, but they can do a lot of life skills. It's such a big spectrum.
I really believe that what we need more people that care, more people that don't have autism, that care, like teenagers and, like you said, seniors, that can help parents, that are trained, that there just needs to be more compassion in our society, and I feel like that should be a part of the message that the autism community is putting out there.
Well, the other problem we got was certain advocates, the autism community, they attacked me, they've called me ableist, they've called me bad things. You know, some of it, they just put so much venom out there,
right,
that you're not actually getting things done. One of the things that 25 years, you gotta remember I'm 25 years in the construction industry, and I have found that it affects how I think about things. You have to build things and solve problems and not just talk about it. You gotta do stuff, you gotta get projects done, you gotta make them work. You got to not fight everybody. You don't get jobs done doing that.
It is to support children like yours that I made that comment that didn't go over well. That autism is a very large spectrum. I see kids that appear to be profound. Some of them become mild autism because of the right treatment. Sometimes we find the exact gene and they get much better. Some of them become moderate autism, but some of them stay profound, even if we find the gene. Some of them we can't help today in 2025, no matter what we do. And you're right, the community is not really supporting them to the degree that perhaps that we should. And we need to consider them as well as the others.
I need to just add something. You said there's no research on profound autism.
Very little, like 6%. They're like
But
people with
no,
profound
just to let
autism.
you know that we are actually doing intense research through brain scans. So we are doing PET CT scans, and we are noticing that those children and adults with profound autism have a very different type of hypometabolism in the brain. So we are able to, through brain scans, separate the mild from the moderate from the severe. And we are also able to, we can also see which parts of the brain are working more and what special skill sets they could possibly have. So today, especially in the neuroimaging world, the focus is shifting from what they cannot do, the brain that is not working properly, to what they can do. And as in all the talks, including what Temple spoke about and Tom spoke about, once we identify what is the thing that they are specially connected to, feel about, and then give them coaching in that, they do miracles. Now, the treatments that we have, the treatment that Titler said, hyperbaric oxygen, our own treatment with stem cell therapy, we are able to help the people with profound autism as well, because the stem cells go and repair that part of the brain which is damaged. And we are seeing non-verbal, see, there's no question about the improvement. A child who's non-verbal for 8-9 years starts talking, you know. Now, there is no question about whether it worked or not, because you're non-verbal, and, you know, surprisingly, among the first things that the children say, they tell their mothers, I love you, mommy. We've got dozens of kids where among the first things that comes out is expression of love. It was just bottled up inside, and it actually gets expressed. Yes, there is work being done. Those distinctions are happening, and it is likely that in the future, the combination of stem cells with hyperbaric oxygen and rehab will possibly help the children.
I want to make a quick comment to you.
Go ahead.
One thing you didn't say in what you just talked about with profound autism, you voluntarily took that on, which is amazing. Not a lot of people would do what you did.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your contribution.
So that's
Rosetta.
a lot.
You're on, Rosetta. Yeah.
We are here because we're together, right? Because we love one another. We're talking about autism. These great people on this panel have different views, different point of views. Remember, we look at life different ways. Each person brings something great to the table. So let's respect every person on the panel, and everyone here is being respected. The thing I would like to point out is that I remember going to Tanzania, and Tom and I was talking with a lady there. She said the moment her son was born, her and her husband was told he would never be married, she would never have grandkids. Now, for my experiences being a nurse, I'm not a nurse now, I'm a motivational speaker, but I was a nurse. So I know what it's like to change diapers. I know what it's like to take care of someone. But I also know patients that are underestimated. So it's very important, no matter what you're told about your child or your loved one, never set the bar so low that you keep it there, that you miss something great about your loved ones. I love you all. Thank you for your time.
So 2 days ago, we went to our neurologist, and we were trying to understand, is there a way of defining physically in the brain autism? And she said no. She provided certain suggestions, and we felt so bad that we didn't tell her that 2 weeks before we have had stem cell treatment in India. So there's such a bad perception in the US, unfortunately. And one of the things that she said is there's no research. In our minds, like, Dr. Sharma has all the research in the world. Specifically, she pointed out to Duke University. Duke University is the one that has done the most studies in the US, but they only do stem cell treatments for kids with cancer. So my suggestion and pledge, Dr. Sharma, how can we let the world about your research? And I know you have it. You are open to give it to anyone who wants that. What can we do, us here, to help the world know about the success of your treatment?
Whether it's leaders, politicians, regulators, they finally listen to people. You're the real voice. You are what is real. You know, all of us, some of us, have professions, some of us have a conflict of interest, some of us have particular preferences or beliefs, but parents have one and only one thing in their mind, the well-being of their children. Is there anything else that you can even think of? Nothing. So your voice is the voice that will be heard. And when you speak it loud enough and repeat it enough, there will be a change. Change comes about when people like you speak out. Because, we believe our own clinical experience is showing us that when we are treating younger children at about 3 with stem cell therapy, within 6 months they are going off the spectrum. The older the child, the longer it takes. And it is my hope and dream that one day this becomes a standard of care. The moment it is diagnosed, especially kids who are profound, will need it. There are children who will not need it. There are a whole lot of children who are mild, who adapt and who get along with life very well. But not everyone. There will be what she's talking about, the profound kids who need help. There's something called a hole in the heart. Kids with Down syndrome have a hole in the heart. If you have a hole in the heart, you fix it. The cardiac surgeon will go and do something and fix it. So, If there is severe and profound damage, it needs to be fixed. And what we are seeing is that once you fix that, whether it's hyperbaric oxygen, whether it's whether it's the supplements that he was talking about, whether it's the stem cell I talk about, whether it's the rehab he talks about, in my lecture I said it all works together. So your voice is the voice that will be heard. Anybody else, any questions?
I have one question. I'm watching with the gentleman behind me who is telling about that. Even my neurologist did not believe when we started the stem cell therapy for my son. But after 3 or 4 visits to India to the Neurosurgeon, the changes she saw in the kid, it's unbelievable. My son is the same patient for last 6 to 7 years with the same neurologist, with the therapies and everything. The development, what she saw after stem cell therapy is totally different. We could able to make understand the neurologist, but the school system did not understanding us actually. Some of my friends, when they go to this kind of a different kind of a therapy out of the book, which is not profound in very popular in USA, they're not even going to tell in their schools actually. They're telling that we're going to vacation for 5 days, 6 days. We did the same thing. We went to the school. I said my kid got help. If somebody needs help, you call my number, I'll tell them the same thing. I told every parent who called me, and I given the number, I told him that what are the benefits which my kid got. I feel if we don't keep the awareness of these things, of different methods, it is impossible to help the whole community. The community needs help. We have to be together to help the system. Because if the system doesn't help, we have to come up from our own side from here and help the system.
My son can see a video now.
Yeah.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And by God, he's following the video for the first time in his life, touching his head, his shoulders, his knees, and toes. He can say 3 weeks out of a stem cell. He can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, even though he has apraxia, and sometimes he closes his mouth to talk. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we practice that every day. It's a miracle. It's science.
But
there's science behind it.
You tell the doctor in the U.S., and there's where is that coming from? We feel uncomfortable telling them because they tell us there's no research. And that's why even though we speak up, we feel outcast. Because that's the system in the U.S. today. It punishes anyone that does any research outside the United States. They don't consider that research. It's like, I haven't seen any research. Neurologist practicing over 20 years.
His pediatrician who didn't believe started believing after he saw the improvements. Go back and say, this is the improvements. Your child was not talking. He's talking within 3 weeks of the stem cell therapy. There is no rocket science to it. A child not talking starts saying ABC till Z after 3 weeks. That's a positive sign. Let the world know it. Speak up for it, and then slowly things will change. And we now have the present health secretary, R.K. Jr., he has actually tweeted about stem cells and hyperbarics. He's actually tweeted that these are things that were intentionally suppressed. He says it openly. He says these were suppressed by the FDA. The health secretary of the United States is saying that treatments like hyperbaric, stem cell, and all these other nutraceuticals, he mentions nutraceuticals, were intentionally suppressed. So when you speak up, they will listen. People do listen to parents.
Yes, and what I did is, I did not listen to any of the parents or anything. I keep on stressing that, yes, we are treating with the same thing, we are treating with the same thing. We will be integrating with the other therapies, yes, but we're not going to leave that. If you think it is not helping, it is your opinion, but not my opinion. I'll do the good thing what my kid needs. I'll stand up for my kid.
The gentleman had a question.
What does the solution look like? Can come from a place of curiosity and discovery rather than who's using language itself. Ask for more discovery about why they were guided in language that way. And maybe, just maybe, instead of just seeing a lot of trees in Kansas during the 30s Dust Bowl trying to survive, maybe we use discovery, we have curiosity with all the groups to bring ourselves into one big collective force that can leverage the impact the world is missing. Thank you.
I think the one big thing, and I'm going to get this lady too, is I'm in Melbourne, for example. The grassroots you hear about, it's finding somewhere locally that believes, and that's where it starts with tremendous experience. And Dr. Sharma and I have worked together in hyperbarics for years now, right? And I go to India consistently. So you got to find the forward-thinking physicians that collaborate, that are thought thinkers and innovators. But for those of you guys who are out there, for me, Brevard Regional Hyperbaric Center, if you guys are around here locally an hour away, come see me.
Those willing and able physicians are very few. And creating some sort of inventory, some sort of Facebook page where you can access and really point out specifically these physicians. We asked our neurologists about hyperbarics. There's no research. What they should point out is the kid that died in Ohio. So they're using those small mistakes sort of to prevail these sort of veil. We need an inventory list of those physicians that are willing. And if everybody can contribute, we have one. But I think if everybody can contribute, who are those physicians that are willing to work looking at alternative medicines?
TACA has a list. If you go into the Facebook group of TACA, and then you have to submit your child, because they only accept people that has kids in the spectrum, right? And they do have a file that is always updated with doctors in the United States that are like pandas, and you can find Rossignol and Dr. Fry's names there.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Masi. I'm from Kenya. I'm a mother of triplet boys with autism. We have to believe that autism is treatable. So we are coming from a background noise that autism cannot be treated. So you get this diagnosis and you are in limbo, you struggle, and then somehow you find the light. So I found some light. We've been doing stem cells since my sons were 5.5. I mean, it has been a game changer. I have come from a state of constant clinical depression to just smiling. I mean, you also, my son, Ricky, even asked Dr. Temple a question, and I mean, that is, I never even knew he's at that space. So what am I saying? What I'm saying, especially to the parents, we have been fortunate to have all these professionals give us very fantastic talks and solutions, but as parents, what is our duty? I feel that our duty is to a call for action. Dr. Sharma said that everybody is speaking in their own space because you cannot be a jack of all trade. You see, that's why we have Dr. Richard is working on genetics and metabolism. We have the OT is working on sensory. We have Dr. Sharma working on stem cell, and so many others. So what I have done as a research, my background, I'm a research scientist, and it has really helped me because in research, we follow protocol to the dot. If you want your experiment to work, you have to follow from A to Z. That's exactly what I've done. I've taken Dr. Sharma's protocol, followed it A to C. I've taken Dr. Temple's protocol, lived experience. She stresses so much about independence and career. And I can tell you the last 2 years, her words have really shaped the way we are doing intervention for my sons. Right now, my 3 sons can all wash themselves, clean their butts, feed themselves, go to sleep, shower, they can mop the house, they can wash their clothes, brush, and now we are doing now outside independence. That's why you see like Ricky is roving all around from hall 1, A, B, C, and asking questions, even I'm not there. Right now, I don't know where he is. He told me, Mom, I want to go and swim. I said, okay. I didn't even know there is a gym in this facility, but last night, Olivia, what did he say? Mom, I'm going to the gym. I asked him, did you carry gym clothes? He said, yes, and he went. So what I'm saying is that let us take what is ours. Their work is research. Let us implement. Let us take everything, not just one thing. It's all about, they have said it's research, and many parents ask me, Mercy, will stem cell work for my children? I'm like, yeah, because it's research. It doesn't know Lenny, it doesn't know your son, it has no face. It's research. Just follow the protocol. You know that stem cell cannot work on its own, work on the diet, metabolism, work on multidisciplinary neurorehabilitation, and definitely be patient. For us, it's been a journey of 8 years. Those who were in Sylvie's talk yesterday morning, they saw my son riding a bicycle, participating in a charity event to raise funds for a school of special needs, and he was actually riding in a crowded highway. I mean, I saw that, and I'm still smitten. I'm still overwhelmed. So please, parents, let's take our mat and walk. Thank you.
I wanted to ask Elizabeth what we can do to help you and your mission and the legislation, to have legislation passed in the government.
We need to fight to enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act in schools, which is something that she is desperately trying to do for families across the country who, even after they learn how to type, are being denied that accommodation in their schools. So again, there's so many things to do. Thank you for the question. That's only one of many things. But you can go to our website, communication, 4all.org, and we have a take action section. And it'll tell you about what Elizabeth is doing to try to help all those who suffer in silence.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. So we'd like to wind up now. We'll ask each panel member to give a concluding remark. Lynn?
I just think that conversations like this are what are needed. We all look at it differently, and that's what makes it right. Because if we all agree with each other all the time, the world would be a very boring place. Mm-hmm. And we each have our different needs. That doesn't make anybody less or anybody more. We just all need to work together. And I just want to say this. Meeting Elizabeth was my highlight. She's right. We have to fight. And guess what? Parents, we do know our children. And when we fight for our children, sometimes we take on a role that we didn't want to take on, but at the end of the day, we can inspire other parents to fight for their children. Because I've had people say to me, I don't have your personality. I'm not willing to just take somebody on. And I say, you don't have to have my personality. You just need to believe in your child.
Thank you, please. Welcome to
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Elizabeth kind of says it all up there. But just to go to what you guys were saying, just real quick for a minute. When my son was little, we got very quickly, as soon as he got diagnosed, we got into looking at biomedical treatments. And we did the gluten and casein-free diet. And when I took him back, because I don't know, I guess I had this thought in my head, because they keep wanting you to come back, like they're going to say something different. And so I took him back like the next year to that same neurologist, and he's like, wow, what are you doing? He looks pretty good. Like, what's happening? And I was like, well, I have him on his diet, and he's making all this tremendous progress. And the doctor said to me, the neurologist, it was a neurologist, a pediatric neurologist, he said, that's like shooting darts in the dark. And I said, hand me the darts. And so, you know, you take people's as much information as you can. You talk to people who have, who are experts in the field, and then you make the best decision you can for your family.
Some of us physicians, like myself, have been around for a while, and we've been treating autism successfully for 30 years, and you're right, the major institutions still don't believe that it works. I'm trying to publish as much as I can. It's a drop in the bucket for what we need. A lot of other people are doing the same. The parents need to fight. Hopefully we have an administration now that is listening. At least now they are. Maybe they'll make a difference. With autism increasing so incredibly rapidly, this is going to become a societal suicide mission if we don't immediately get off the tracks and do something about it now and take care of all the kids along the way.
Thank you.
No one tells your story better than you do. And too many of us are struggling to tell it. But when you find your voice and use it, that's when your life transforms for the better and other people's lives transform for the better. So Go out there and do what needs to be done. Some of us have more work to do than others. We have come a long way, but we still have a very long way to go. And I'm not much of a gardener, but I think each and every one of us is like a flower, and we might bloom later in life. Certain circumstances may promote or stop our growth. Find the place where you can not only survive, but thrive. That's why I finished my first Ironman in Maryland. No heat, no humidity, no headwinds, no hills. I did it. You can find the place where you can survive and thrive too. Go get it. Final thoughts?
Well, yeah, working on more and more independence. I definitely believe in that. Unfortunately, I'm seeing too many young adults that have become recluses in their room. That's something I was never allowed to do. You know, they were always getting me out doing things, but there was always choices. For example, when I was afraid to go to my aunt's ranch, which involved getting on an airplane and flying from New York to Arizona, there was a choice, 1 week or all summer. Not going wasn't a choice. You give some choices. It's like I talked about the kid that wouldn't put the phone in the x-ray machine. He can leave the phone at home or put it in the dog dish or put it in his backpack. Those are the choices. If it goes to the airport, it goes in the x-ray, period. But there's some choice as to how you do it. And I've worked with so many people professionally that I know are on the autism spectrum. I've been to all the tech companies. You know, Microsoft, been there, Google, a lot of the other, Apple. And there's all kinds of autistic people there. You see, this is the problem we've got. At one end of the spectrum, you've got that. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got, I'm going to call them the 24/7. These are the people that need constant care. And some of them have varying amounts of problems. And I think it's this population you may be more likely to find that some of these treatments work. I'm on a gluten-free diet now for heartburn. That only started last year. But we've got to go out and just see what we can do, because I'm seeing too many people of my type going nowhere. Way too many, because they're not learning life skills. And they're not learning work skills.
Well, I echo what she said. You only handicap yourself by choice, right? That's it. We're here. As a physician that's devoted my life to doing this as well, we're here. And I think you just have to find your village. You guys know that, but at least locally, if I could be an asset to you an hour way around, let us know. And you're looking at a panel that believes the same thing. It's not pseudoscience. It is grounded in science. We're just forward way thinking and combining it all. As Dr. Sharma said, it's a multifactorial approach. And when you do that, combining all these different modalities, you can see dramatic miracles in your kids' lives. And every study that you look at with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, stem cells, no matter what, just like in my own life, it all showed improvement in quality of life. And is that now all that we're all looking for? That's exactly it. So find your doctors, find the people that believe in you, and go get it.
So thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for being a wonderful audience. We want you to know that as parents of children on the spectrum, you, for those of us professionals here, are our inspiration, our motivation. You are the wind below our wings that keeps us doing what we are doing, because very often the work we do is in the face of stiff opposition and resistance. But what you need to know is all of us in our own way, okay, whatever aspect of medicine we practice, rehabilitation we practice, will continue to do the best that we can to ensure that all whether they are children or adults on the spectrum, are able to be the best of what they are. We are able to bring out the best potential within them. The work that we are doing with stem cells, and we've treated over 6,000 children with autism, a total of 15,000 patients, including cerebral palsy. We have over 100 publications. So the research is there. It's just a matter of time as more and more, like your children start improving and start speaking, as more and more people get to know, this will be available everywhere. The truth, real science, real treatments cannot be hidden and suppressed forever. It will come out. And it is my belief that it's a combination of comprehensive rehab, micronutrient supplementation, rehabilitation, hyperbaric oxygen, and the stem cell that we do, and all the advice that Temple has given. If you listen to Temple, I suggest you watch her movies, you watch her podcast. She gives you very simple advice. That one advice, talk slowly, results in tremendous speech improvements. That's simple advice. So sometimes it's a very simple advice. It's not something high-tech that brings about the best results. So I want to thank all the panel. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. Thank you for being here. And thank you very much. I thank Dolly, thank you for arranging everything. Lynn, thank you for being host of the conference. You two guys have done a great job. Thank you.